What the hell is going on in everyone's lives? Hey, what?
And light profanity tag, not getting recommended. Keep going.
Right off the bat, demonetized.
Is hell a swear word?
If you in YouTube monetization, if you go down the list in the profanity section, we have to select light profanity now because within the first 30 seconds you said either hell or damn. So, well, we're screwed. And we're not getting paid.
Here anyway, then, aren't we?
This is so sad. Everyone subscribe.
You could
to
also
my
just
Twitch.
cut the video. I guess. Just
No. We're gonna start with this.
We're just gonna wallow in our sadness.
We're never gonna be Dream Minecraft. Never.
What did you just say?
We're never gonna be Dream Minecraft now. We're never gonna game the algorithm. It's never gonna happen.
Who is what?
You don't know Dream? Dude. Come on, you make TikToks, dude. You're supposed to know the Zoomer culture. You're supposed to be the ambassador.
I don't really go on the internet that much.
What do you mean?
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
What? Now, what does that mean?
As in, I don't use social media that much. I don't know the trends and shit. You know?
I mean, I guess, but then every once in a while, I just see a random TikTok on my Twitter feed of Bren cooking a dish and be like, "Look at me!" Like, I don't know.
The only TikToker of the group doesn't use social media though. Doesn't go on the internet. This guy deleted Twitter once, and he's just been woke ever since.
I don't
It's
use
unbelievable.
Oh, you guys are still looking at the timeline?
It's unbelievable. This 7 head.
You guys still looking at the? You still following people?
Oh my gosh.
Welcome to Plat Chat
social
VALORANT.
media cleanse.
Let me fucking speak and do the intro. Episode 23, Plat Chat VALORANT. Welcome to the show, everybody. Spitting on the mic and ting, you know.
Yep.
Fuck it out.
Yep.
You go hang out with
I know.
Marv.
Wait, is that all it was?
What?
Are you doing the intro or not, man?
First topic, fuck it. Sentinels. Sentinels won the JBL Quantum Cup. Look at that. Wow, they beat 100 Thieves. They beat 100 Thieves in the semis. They won the whole thing. Good on them, you know?
Good on them. That's the takeaway from this.
I mean, well, let's be real. Let me set the context and the scene. I mean, there was a lot of people doubting Sentinels. Obviously, some tragic circumstances involving Shazam, right? And in the previous First Strike event that happened just before this, people were like, "Oh, no, Sentinels, they're shit." They weren't. They were being incredibly disrespectful online about Sentinels as a whole, essentially. They didn't have much practice. I think Shazam went on stream and he said how much practice they got. It was essentially none in the lead up to First Strike. And now that they were finally, I guess, back together as a team for a decent amount of time, they've proven, at least in this setting, that they are still potentially one of the best teams in the world. And I know the 100 Thieves stands are going to be coming out here being like, well, they were streaming. They weren't taking it seriously. And to that I say, just fucking go sit in the corner, stare at the wall for a little bit, you know?
I mean, there's the best first place to start as well, because I think a bunch of people were wondering whether this was even going to be a serious tournament, despite the fact that it had $50,000 on the line. Because the first thing we ever heard about this tournament was 100 Thieves were going to stream their comms during it, which isn't something you normally do in a serious event. But considering it was towards the end of the year, and 100 Thieves had just won First Strike, I think they were taking it a little more casually. As far as I can tell, all of the other teams were doing their best. Were like actually trying their hardest. I know that TSM and Sentinels had been scrimming beforehand, though 100 Thieves took a little break apparently. And I was watching everything from 100 Thieves' point of view, because they were not just streaming their games, but they were also doing like companion streams of the other games that were happening as well. So I got a decent feel for like how seriously 100 Thieves were actually taking this tournament. And they played the BL1s in the group stage with Dicey on Sage, which I don't know how that came around, but it didn't seem to hurt them too much, but it was definitely not the composition that they're normally playing with. Still a decent comp though. It's not like an actual troll comp. They had Nitro IGLing instead of Steel for the majority of the time, and they were using like their old strats. So every time they would try and do something, they were like, oh, well, let's not use our current strats, but like we need to do something in showers. Let's run our old showers take, or Oh, we have a Sage instead of a Jett. Let's run our current default, but a little bit changed because we don't have the Jett dash. That kind of stuff. And then once it got to the playoffs, they still had Nitro IGLing up until the final map of Icebox, where they said, we don't have enough strats for Icebox, so we might as well play it properly because you're not giving anything away.
Yeah, I think with the Sage pick, that seemed to me like they were just memeing on heretics in EU to some extent.
Yes, I think so.
That's what it seemed like to me, because there was some type of quote out there in the ecosystem about Hiko saying something or other about like being behind in the meta, or maybe Steel said it. One of them had said it on.
No, it was Hiko. Hiko said it on the stream.
Yes, I think that was just sort of them memeing on EU and heretics winning with a Sage, so they were playing with it. But I mean, they looked 13-0'd Envy with it, so heretics might be right.
Envy not looking as hot recently, I have to say. Not looking as hot over First Strike and now JBL, I have to say. It's not looking good. Not looking good for them when you get 13-0'd.
But yeah, that's never a good crazy.
I mean, but also they weren't even the other one to get. They weren't the only team to get slapped. I mean, TSM got 13-1.
Yeah, by Sentinels.
Yeah. So by Sen. Yeah.
I mean, to me, watching that game, and I think it looked to me like TSM were the tank was on E. I think they were just gassed from Strike, and they're like, "Oh, we're playing this, okay," and they just kind of goed up. And
maybe.
I
also think though, Sentinels looked a lot better, and I think that was another. When I was watching the Sentinels TSM game in particular, what I noticed more so than anything was that the tempo shifted massively for Sentinels. Normally on Ascent, they're a really high tempo team. Like they love to just go to a site and hit the site hard. And what they were doing instead was like putting a bit of pressure over on A and making sure that they killed Sabrosa when he was pushing out of B main or pushing mid every time. Like they always had Zoms and Dapper playing on the opposite side of the map, which they don't normally do. That's like a specific strat that they did against TSM, I think, to try and mess with them running the triple Sentinel comp.
Yeah.
And then they were like pushing them aggressively on defense as well when it came to Haven, or when it came to their defense.
I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to say this is going to be my it. This is going to be close to Wyatt's it, but I just can't. I know we've all been Stockholm syndromed here by watching EU, especially Josh from the BO1s and stuff. And everyone's like, yes, this is how Valorant is meant to be played with 20 seconds of total game time. But like, I just can't really get much like out of this tournament. I'm going to be honest. I just can't. It was BO1s for groups. And the First Strike had just happened. And like Wyatt said with TSM, they kind of looked like they were running on empty. You know, it seemed like they just don't have any more stamina left. You know, they need to perhaps go do some Kegels or something like that. You know, they didn't have anything left in the tank at times. And then sure, FaZe and Gen.G, I think they looked a lot better. But
well, we'll get into that. But I do think the one interesting match while we're focused on Sentinels is Sentinels 100 Thieves. I mean, that was one of the only BO3s we got to see them play. One against FaZe, that was a White Claw game if I've ever seen it. I mean, they kind of just skated to the victory. But against 100 Thieves, that was actually like a real match for them. I mean, it seemed like they wanted to come out and win. And I think it's good for the scene overall that they won, because now we're heading into the next year with a more interesting question of who's going to be on top. And you'll have
it is hard to answer that question.
It is hard.
Also, the fan bases are inflamed.
Yeah, the rabid fan
Steel
bases
comes out and types some like sarcastic as shit comment on Twitter. They're just like, "Oh yes, Steel, yes," and then all the Sentinel fans are like, "No, Steel, no," and so it just continues on.
I think me and Kurt, when we were flying to Texas, we witnessed Steel miss his flight.
Really?
Yeah. We were waiting at the gate, and I just heard over the intercom, it was like, Joshua Nissan, your flight is departing. This is your final call. Joshua Nissan. And he didn't turn up. Didn't turn up for his flight. How many Joshua Nissans are in LA?
It can't be that many.
I mean, I would imagine LA's a very big city. So,
yeah, but
that was like, timed right with him going back.
Timed right with him going back home.
Yeah, it must have.
Also,
been,
he'd be on the 100. He'd be on the 100 Thieves private jet. You know,
true.
He wouldn't be flying commercial. It just wouldn't make any sense.
Wow, you're just adding more fuel for the fans saying that's giving some excuses. He was late for his flight. He just got home. He was jet lagged. Couldn't play well. I do think though as well. Like 100 Thieves, at least Steel. I think he's used to the streaming while competing environment. He did that a lot in CS. Like I remember all the way back to before the iBuy power ban, when he was putting together the one team Torqued. This is ancient CS history. Like he was the first person to do the stream team thing, and they were taking it ultra serious, and streaming games at the time. So it's something that I think he's pretty used to some extent. But yeah, overall, I was going to say though, just for me in this Sentinels 100 Thieves game, the first thing that comes to mind when looking back at it is that I think that the Sentinels players turned up individually in a much more significant way than they did in the first strike of BO3. Specifically, I think Sinatra and Shazam, both individually, were really playing well.
Yeah, I also thought that Sick looks, now that the team's had a little more time to actually practice, Sick looks much better when it comes to the breach gameplay. It's always been a bit of a question mark for me whether that was the right role to have him on, because breach tends to play further at the back of the pack, can't get as involved. It's much more about like picking the right spots and doing your homework and being really coordinated. And in the previous times that I'd seen him play on Ascent, it just didn't look that great. And the way the map ban went down was quite interesting too. It's the same kind of stuff where 100 Thieves are better than Sentinels on Bind and Ascent. So they try and get rid of one of those, and then 100 Thieves have to get rid of Split because they just know they're going to lose to Sentinels on that. So we keep seeing Icebox in these series alongside Haven and one of Bind or Ascent. It seems like Ascent was actually pretty winnable here for Sentinels, but at the same time 100 Thieves aren't playing with like their main IGL, and they're not using the most current strats when it came to Ascent. So I think that normally I think it's pretty fair to say, judging from the couple of best of threes that we've seen from these teams so far, that 100 Thieves are better than Sentinels on at least Bind and Ascent. And so BO5 matches between these two teams, BO3 matches, are always going to come down to Icebox, because they're going to be able to pick up like Haven, and then the other team's going to be able to pick up Bind or Ascent. And so we're going to see these crazy Icebox games repeatedly if these two teams play against each other. It's so interesting because they were playing Icebox 100% seriously. Both of these two teams. It was like the only map in the tournament where you can totally say 100 Thieves were playing their best, because they had Josh IGL, they had Steel IGL, and they had they said they were using their current strats because they didn't have too many to be able to give away. It's a brand new map anyway, and the map's just changed. So, I mean, the fuck does anyone even really know what the hell they're doing on that map anyway? I think it was like the day before that the patch had hit.
Yeah.
But it was very close and could have easily gone either way. But Sentinels felt like they had a better understanding of how to play the actually, I wouldn't even say that. They didn't have a better understanding of how to play the attacking half. They just inted on A repeatedly, but it worked.
The immortal strat, but it worked this time.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I like the Sky, though. I have to say, I mean, I remarked last time on our last episode how I feel like the Sky on Icebox and for certain I mean, even like Bind, even where teams had, especially with Sick playing a lot more of the breach now, where it feels like it's sort of meant in a way to almost replace the Sova in the maps where you have a lot less wide open spaces because you have so many corners you need to clear. And I kind of like this where they're using Sky on Icebox. A lot of teams are using Sky on Icebox, and I like Six. I like Sick. I can't speak. Sick. I like Six Sky. I can't even speak. But I like the Sky on Icebox a lot. I feel like they actually were getting a lot of value out of it, and I think it really does serve a purpose of sort of like clearing those corners that are so hard to check because of how many angles you have to worry about on Icebox.
I also think it's pretty much impossible to hold A unless you have flashes to peek with. Like I've been watching teams try and hold on to A, and now that back box is removed, you know, the big one in the corner that like zombies used to hide behind. Yeah. Now that that's gone, there's just no good positions. Also, they've removed the like close right corner, the Wyatt corner where he used to just hide in all of our bugs. So there's just no good position for the defenders to hold on to. You need to you need to like time your utility as they hit the site, but there isn't like what you're going to do, throw a recon dart or something. You can, but you also need a flash, I think. So the 100 Thieves comp where they're running the Sova and just the Reyna's not really good enough to flash peek. You need like I think you need like a Breach or a Sky on this map, and the Breach just doesn't seem as good as the Sky.
Yeah, I think you do as well. I think a Breach or a Sky are pretty necessary. I also think that Raze is really valuable on this map. I think this is one of the maps where Asuna could play Raze if he wants over the Reyna. I think you get an immense amount of value out of the Raze utility over on A. There's just so many angles to clear, and Raze is the best at clearing out angles with utility. Regardless, one thing as well, just 100 Thieves are really scary. They're like, even though they lost, walking away from that match, they're really good. They are so good in all of the clutch situations, like 2vx, 1vx, like any post-plant situation. It feels like any two players alive on that team, they have a chance at winning the round, and they did multiple times. They won several 2v3 situations throughout the series. They're just good. they are genuinely a terrifying
very, very
team going into next year.
Despite coming into
loss.
2021, they're mega scary. I still think that they've got some growing room as well, though. Not just in terms of strategically, but while Dicey and Steel putting up these huge results, and Nitro as well, and Hiko obviously, but I think they're not getting the most out of Dicey that they could be in a lot of these situations, and I think that's the real like X factor for 100 Thieves. If Dicey can get to a position where he's in the same boat as the other elite Jets of the scene, like, I don't know, like Wardell or Shazam and these kind of people who are going to hit the shot almost every time and who are going to be in the right position for their team. And you can rely on them with consistency to be providing big impact kills for you. I think that's the next level up position for 100 Thieves, because they're kind of subsisting without him being a star player at the moment. When he has the potential to be, we've seen it before on other teams. But with the op getting nerfed, it seems like it kind of hit Dicey. And it's been a wonderful surprise that Asuna has stepped up massively on this team too. He's kind of given more space and he's been able to really deliver.
Yeah, I think Asuna was definitely for me, I was very worried because I've already said this so many different times, but like, and I think it touches on what Wyatt was talking about, how they're just so clutch. Is like they got the boomer influence from CS. And they've spent so much time already playing in these very, very high pressure situations. And for a lot of teams that have these young guys that they're still trying to grow, they're like little potted plants, and they've planted all the young dudes in there and they're putting some Miracle Grow on them and they're waiting for them to sprout. And also, he's flowered. He's flowered a bit. He's a beautiful young daisy there that's actually getting a lot more value now for 100 Thieves. But Dicey's still, just the buds. There's still buds there. He still needs to open up just a bit, like a little water, ready like to go. But that's how I felt like with FaZe too, because FaZe, even though I said earlier, like we just came out of First Strike, there wasn't that many matches played. I feel like Marved in this tournament looked a lot better than he had in the past at points, and also especially when we look at compared to his performance in First Strike as a whole, and then besides the quals. I do think that for a lot of these squads that sort of have a mix of this veteran talent and young guys, it's really just a matter of getting this potential up to the point that they want where they can get consistency, because they have the raw mechanics. It's just all about finding the consistency. And it's just so many of the younger players here with these teams, JMO, Dicey, Marved, etc. As we go on down the list. And Asuna finally reaching that sort of level of being pretty consistent and finding the opening frags they want, I think is really very important for 100 Thieves, because now they don't have to worry about two young guys kind of shitting their pants. Now they don't have to worry about one getting back up to the level of just like, okay, we need you to hit the clutch shots. We need you to be the Jett that gets a lot of these opening frags.
Let's take a look at the bracket overall, the group matches and whatnot. You can take your pick, honestly. What one you want to talk about? You want to talk about?
I mean, we can talk about FaZe since they made the finals. In, I don't know, rather, I don't want to say unimpressive fashion, but it wasn't like FaZe turned over a new leaf and blew their way to the finals. They just they they kind of just ended up there. Like, I mean, they went 1-2 in the groups, but had the most rounds for. A lot due to the fact that they just played a really long game against Ninja's team. So they just had a lot of so they got a bunch of rounds for. So it wasn't like an incredible showing that got them to the finals. I mean, they had a pretty solid win against Gen.G.
When you compare that to like Envy, though, I mean, is this like, considering Envy's performance, especially when you also compare it to their first strike performance, I mean, really, sure, they wandered in, they just sort of ambulated on into the finals, right? But like, was that really any better? I mean, can we really knock them too hard compared to like Envy's performance? Right?
I mean,
I'm not knocking
any
them
better
at all.
if Envy had made it.
I'm not knocking them, but it's just that
Envy are two-dimensional, though. I mean, actually, they are flat at the moment. They have no three-dimensional volume whatsoever.
Okay. Paper Mario looking asses.
They really are. They're not doing anything in these games. Their results so far, like over the past 2 weeks, is it, since their loss to TSM in first strike, have just been appalling. Not just because they've lost to bad teams, but because every time they've popped up on stream and we've actually been able to watch them, they've looked atrocious too, individually and in terms of their teamwork. Like, they're nowhere near as good as what we've seen from them in the past. Like, the coordination and the individual skill to be able to push out certain areas and empower their style simply isn't there. Like, they got 13-0'd by 100 Thieves with Dicey playing the Sage, and they just got absolutely pounded there on Bind. And then they lose to FaZe as well, which is an off-stream game, but that should just never be happening. Considering where Envy were previously ranked coming into first strike, this is like a massive plummet off a cliff.
It's also the first
time. It was a double whammy. Oh, go ahead.
Wyatt, I was just going to say, it's also the first time in quite some time that they actually are trending downwards. They were improving for so many months.
I think it's their only time, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, really. This is the first time. I wonder if there is some sort of player confidence level, some sort of mental booming happening within that team, because they don't look as individually confident as they did in early first strike, where it looked like they were a genuine contender for the title. Where they were just running some of the teams over. The individual confidence was there. Like, that game against TSM in first strike kind of kicked off this past 2 weeks where they just don't look as confident individually. I just don't think it's there right now.
Yeah.
And, their game was off stream, so we didn't really get to see all of it, but just to be a statistical Steven here, and also to harp on a point that we have all harped on before, is Reyna killing Envy? Let's make a clickbait title. Put that to YouTube real quick. We're all going to do the YouTuber face. Is Reyna killing Envy? Because Caboose's Reyna in this series, in the series versus FaZe, and also in first strike, it seems like, because Reyna's already sort of a feast or famine. You put your fragger on there, and like, you try to integrate as much as possible, and you hope your Reyna player kind of just gets the kills. And that there's really nothing else. There's no utility that's getting a lot of value for your team. It's just setting up your Reyna to hopefully get a lot of kills. And Caboose has just not been getting kills at all. And I mean, obviously we can't just look at the scoreboard and say like, well, Caboose is the problem. I'm not saying Caboose is the problem. I'm more saying that maybe I feel like Envy are sort of trying to force the Reyna a lot with Caboose. And when he pops off, which is, very classic Reyna phenomena. But then a lot of times when, especially if they aren't playing with confidence, Reyna's like the most like, I have to have a huge penis in the server type of agent. Like, how are you going to play? Like, you need to be like sending the leers, putting the utility, making just go for a lurk or something. Like, you're entering, you're sucking, you're going in deep. And I feel like that Envy are just not having any success currently in the past 2 weeks with Reyna.
I think it's a Reyna problem, though.
Sexual imagery from that entire statement.
Yeah,
Isn't that mainly an overarching problem with Envy, not necessarily attributed to the agent? Like, if you saw them playing Raze, for example, or any other duelist, instead of the Reyna, you'd still see probably the same issues cropping up.
You know what?
Potentially, I feel like there's more. I feel like you can get a lot more value overall with some of the. Even if you're having a worse performance, like the other duelists, you would still be getting more out of it.
It wouldn't be a 13-0, but it. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think? Is it
personally? I don't think that Reyna is the thing that's killing Envy. I think their style has been read, and they are struggling to adjust. Like they had big performances playing with this team with the addition of Food and Crashies when they first started, and a lot of that was based on them playing a style where they're defensively pushing out areas and boxing people in to gain a lot of control, and then feeding that information to FNS for him to be able to make mid-round decisions and also to pull off some big lurks too. I think people are just aware of where Food and Caboose are holding in these like weird meme positions. You see them getting naded and mollied out all the time now. And when they put a bit of pressure on one side of the map, whoever's holding the other side just knows that Food or Caboose are going to be pushing it too, because it's what they do all the time. And I think this like, in some sense, that does come down to the Reyna too, because that's the style you want to be playing with the Reyna. But I think it's like the style is the root cause of it, that they just don't understand how to adapt when the other team is countering them. I think that's what it comes down to most.
I absolutely agree. And I think that I do wonder if that game against TSM kind of shattered their brains a bit, because in that game, they lost the map control every single round. Sabroso was just on both maps on his Raze in that first strike BO3. He was taking free control of any area he pleased and was never getting pushed out. He was never getting contested. Like, if you go back and look at that Ascent game, he had control of B on attack and defense the entire time alone. They were just terrified to even fight for the map control. And they're just letting teams just fully execute on them and just have their way with them. Which is why I feel like they've lost their confidence. Nice little smart.
I like that you were following up on the sexual metaphors there. It's like they just ravaged them. It's absolutely.
But really, I do wonder if their confidence has kind of been broken a bit after this match. Yeah, that Kurt just pulled up now. Because they are just not. Look at
Caboose there as well, just stuck in wine, getting mollied out too.
Yeah,
it happens every time you watch them play now as well. They're just getting spotted in all of these little corner areas, and it just means that you get no value from your duelists.
Yeah, and I agree. Where I don't think the comps are necessarily the overarching issue for this team, but I just still have to wonder. This was something we worried about when this roster was put together. How are Food and Caboose going to be, how are they going to be worked into this system, because they have so many overlapping best agents. Like, I think Caboose's Phoenix was one of the best, but we're not really seeing him on it at the moment. And Ascent, I think, was one of the maps where he was actually kind of innovating with the Phoenix. Like, he had little flash techs and things that I didn't see any other Phoenix doing. Like, he was actually using the utility in a very new, intelligent way. He was coming up with his own usage for it. But so I do wonder if that has affected it to any extent. I feel like it has, but yeah, I don't think that's the primary issue.
Playbook issue.
Yeah,
an overarching playbook issue. And I mean, I
think it is a bit. Yeah,
it's a difficult thing to solve. I mean, we saw teams like Gen.G struggling with this as well. Arguably, still haven't really gotten over that hump. You got to try and reinvent yourself. You got to go to college. You got to dye your hair.
You have to delete Twitter.
You got to delete Twitter. It's just not possible. You got to stop looking at the timeline.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Gen.G were pretty interested in this tournament, though. To be honest, I mean,
Gen.G was the example I used because they were the example I had in my mind of a team that just became too one-dimensional in their overarching play and has had to change it.
Yeah, but this performance for Gen.G in the JBL Cup was a weird one, because they come away with wins over Sentinels, TSM, and Cloud9 in the group stage. They go 3-0. It's not like they wiped the floor with any of them, but it was really solid performances. To be able to win BO1s is okay, they're BO1s, but when you're winning every BO1 in your group and they're over like Sentinels and TSM, that's pretty impressive. And then I haven't watched this Gen.G FaZe Clan game, but when I saw this, I was like, oh, back to classic Gen.G, where they can upset the top teams, but they just lose to aggressive teams like FaZe. I haven't watched it, but that's my gut reaction, is that that's to be expected from Gen.G.
Yeah, I mean, also, if you want to be a bit of a scoreboard Steven, if you want to pull up the stats for that game, Kurt, like on the first day, the Gen.G team play on day one in the groups was excellent. And also, aside from that, still GMD and Hwin were just popping off in those games, and Sean was playing really well too. But in this game against FaZe, they individually as well were just not competing at the same caliber they were just the day before. And it is honestly, I was excited after the first day. I'm like, oh wow, they're really figuring this out. Like their team play was incredible, individually really good, and then against FaZe they just flop. I mean,
I feel like where Gen.G was a weird situation though, right? Like because Gen.G, they had not really been able to break out. They were good for a while, and they haven't been able to break out this paradigm of not being able to really beat any top teams, especially aggressive ones. But sure, they won all their groups, but like Josh said, it was BO1s. But also TSM did not look like TSM that we saw in First Strike. It did not look like that TSM. And also C9 is still ongoing its own issues, where C9 was looking pretty rough, I think.
Oh, we'll get to Cloud9.
They're looking pretty rough. So we're looking at Gen.G's performance and saying, oh, they looked really good, right? And like, yeah, but a lot of that still I felt was still that old, that's still pretty much just, it was the same Gen.G, just with good performances from their top players, where I feel like they didn't necessarily innovate their style anymore when they had changed at all. It was just TSM and C9 kind of looked deflated. They had just like popped like a balloon.
Yeah, I think that's fair to an extent.
What I did really like about Gen.G when they were playing against TSM is that they knew exactly what TSM were fighting for at all times on the map, and they rinsed them for it. It was like being ported back to August, September, when all of the NA teams were hard anti-stratting each other. And it felt like we didn't get any of that in First Strike, really, because people weren't showing their true tendencies up until the main tournament, and so you couldn't really like hard anti-strat teams. But in this tournament, I felt like it popped its head out quite a number of times. And this Haven game where Gen.G just dismantled TSM was like the amount of specific pressure on Drone and Wardell, exactly where they like to play on the map, in terms of when Wardell tries to challenge a long on Haven, he was getting smoked out in that position. So Wardell was trying to push past the smoke and getting punished. Wardell was trying to go on top of the box and getting punished. Wardell was trying to play behind the box and getting shock darted and punished. Like they completely owned that area of the map to make sure Wardell couldn't play there. And then on C, where Drone plays behind the boxes and he tries to flash out on the Phoenix, they're jet smoking there so that his flash doesn't do anything, and then dashing into that smoke and challenging him. And so it seemed like Gen.G had a plan that was very much specific to countering TSM. There were multiple components of that seemed extremely well prepared against what TSM were doing. And that isn't really what we want to see from Gen.G. Anti-strats are decent. They'll get you so far. But what we really wanted to see was them reinventing themselves, was them actually getting strategies that are theirs, that are working against any opponent, not just against one specific opponent.
That is actually a really good point. That is a excellent point, and it is very, very true. And that's, when they go up against a team like FaZe that are so reliant on attack, just contact pushes, just Baby Bay walking forward, scoped in, taking some crazy angle and finding the pick, just players lurking up individually. I mean, FaZe go for so many solo plays, and they'll pay off to some extent because they have a high individual skill level, and they'll find those picks. And it's hard to anti-strat for kind of just a chaotic style, And they really fell victim to that. And in that game as well, on the side of FaZe, I just have to say, Baby Bay is really still impressing. I think he's continues to impress on that team for me at this point, where I was a bit worried about his place on the team, maybe I don't know, early First Strike a month ago, 2 months ago or so. But at this point, I think Baby Bay has been a serious standout for FaZe. He's really impressive.
I am still worried. The man plays like a crackhead. It's seriously like he is dashing. Like if he is trying to, I don't know how to explain it, but he uses dash in the most ridiculous ways I've ever seen any Jett do. Like if he's trying to take an ego duel anywhere on the map and the guy runs around the corner, he will dash to like chase them down, even though he's at a disadvantage at the beginning. There, he's kind of like banking on the fact that it's so dumb that he's doing this that they're not going to expect it. Like seriously, his ability usage is fucking crazy when it comes to the Jett. it's so individual and non-team based. And so that's why I'm saying that I still have some doubts, because as FaZe get better and better, I feel like he's going to have to fairly fundamentally change that in order to get value at the highest level. Like, the team play just isn't there for FaZe to me. And so if they want it to be there, they're going to have to change some pretty big things about how their players like to play. I just don't really... It's going to take a genius to come up with a coherent team style to fit FaZe, because their players are insane.
Well, I mean, I think you probably will have to moderate it, right? Because you can't just do a very one-dimensional style all the time. But I feel like we're kind of looking at Babybay's utility usage as we're thinking of it almost like, okay, well, it's a attack shooter, but also remember it's Valorant too. It's like, I feel like we've talked a lot about how we haven't scratched the surface with the depth here with this game in terms of what you can do with the utility and the agent abilities. And Jett with Babybay dashing around corners, is it dumb? Yeah, but is it unique and something that's really only possible in Valorant and sort of what you can sort of achieve there? I think it's also, it's like when people were mauling over Stewie back in the day pushing smokes. I feel like we're sort of looking at Babybay and like, sure, it's kind of dumb, the plays overall, like at a holistic standard, but we're looking from an observer point of view and not a player point of view. Like, we're looking at the overhead and like we can sit there and be impartial. While if you view it in the moment of what is a player thinking as they're playing, they're not expecting Babybay to do just absolute crackhead energy plays all the time, right? And sure, teams will start being like, okay, Babybay is going to chase me around the corner with the dash and punish him, right? But if you just evolve it a little bit and you start fitting your style around maybe Babybay doing just crazy stuff, then I really don't think it's necessarily the most one-dimensional play style ever, because you can definitely change it and sort of do all sorts of wacky things with the Jett usage and with the dashes and the smokes, and you can just do crazy things that no one's going to expect. And I actually don't mind it too much as long as it doesn't turn into feeding, which at points it has been feeding. At points, for sure.
I also think, at some points it's been feeding, but it's also because the comps that team runs and the way that they all play, they don't do much in the way of setting each other up. Yeah, they're all just kind of doing. They're all just like, oh, hey, I found a kill. I go, oh, I got a 2K through a smoke. Like, it's just so much individuality. I think that if maybe they put a bit more emphasis on trying to set up Babybay as the guy for that team, that he would look even more outstanding and more consistent.
Combo plays with like that, like little two-man plays, are kind of necessary element that you need if you're going to be performing at the highest level, I think, in Valorant these days. Just throw a fucking flash in, you know? Just like, I don't know.
No.
Just give him something.
No thanks. Because that is like the bread and butter for good Jetts, right? Scream does it for Liquid all the time. I mean, Skadoodle was doing it for T1. Like, setting up Jett players is like a kind of really good standard for top teams. The difference is FaZe are just like, okay, Babybay, good luck. You're a berserker hero. And they send him down mid and he's going on into Valhalla.
Yeah, when I watch FaZe, what strikes me the most, contrasted to other top teams, is that they're so greedy with their utility. They use it for themselves all the time instead of using it for their teammates. Like, other teams will use like their Jett smokes for their teammates, you know, to help them out in a tough position. Babybay throws 3 at his feet to try and become a sheep. Yep. Like, that is...
You gotta try and they need a good coach.
All the time.
They need a good coach that can tie it into Overwatch terms. If I was coaching this team, I'd be like, so every time you're going into the game, you got to think, how you got to smoke, you got to dash, you got to flash. How do you create a hot hook combo? You gotta break it down to them in time, like very basic elements.
They all need Overwatch. Like, do you think if Babybay is like going to the bank for a loan, it's like, could you explain it to me in Overwatch terms? You know, like, maybe talk about ult economy here for my actual economy. Like, I don't think that has to. You know, I think it needs to be the inverse, where they need a CS coach. They need someone to teach them how to play attack shooter.
No, of course, I mean, it was mainly in jest that I was saying that, but I think it is the individuality comes from almost probably a carry-on effect from them playing Overwatch, and it's...
Do you think so? I don't think that makes any sense. Like, in theory, if you come from Overwatch, you should understand...
You should be pretty good at
team
syncing
play,
up
ability usage. Like, all of the things that FaZe are lacking are the things that you would expect to be good from Overwatch.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the examples where you would be comboing the normal abilities in Overwatch.
Well, I just mean stuff like being aware that you need to like save a bubble or save a cooldown.
Yeah, there's
for
a lot of
Sure. Yeah,
cooldown
yeah,
usage
yeah.
with
There's
Overwatch.
so
I mean,
much of that kind of
just
stuff in
speed
Overwatch.
boost. The halt, you literally listed one, halt hook. Like that's just 2 normal abilities working
Yeah,
out
sure.
right there.
That was
Like,
the first example that popped in my head, which is why I was like, maybe they just need to be refer back to that, you know? Trick them into thinking they're playing
maybe
Overwatch
they
or
just
something.
simply cannot. Their brain is just like SpongeBob in the episode where it's like fine dining and breathing, and that's all they know. Like, but it's Overwatch and shooting, and like so we just replace everything, and they'll just understand it. But that doesn't make any sense though. It simply doesn't
No, it
make any
doesn't.
sense. And Josh makes the point of like, if you played Overwatch at the top level, where so much of it, especially when they played goats. God damn it! They
Yeah,
played
I know,
goats.
right?
Like all these players are in goats. I mean, granted, Corey was on Washington Justice, so I mean, you could argue, did he really play goats? But like, the point being, they should know sort of like some basic utility usage here, and it just sometimes it feels
Yeah,
like it simply doesn't make sense.
I think though, when you look at their position in the scene, they've got to be. I mean, they're absolutely a top 10 team in NA right now, which you couldn't say like a couple of months ago. You would have said that they were more towards like 15 to 20. Maybe not even a couple of months ago. Maybe it would have been only a month ago. Well,
Like
no, because that was during
First
First Strike. Yeah, beginning of First Strike though, you probably would have had them as like a 15
They were
to
looking
20
dog
team.
shit. at a
They
certain
lost to
point.
Yeah.
Equinox like really
Yeah,
early
exactly.
on, and
Yeah. And I think that inconsistency is always going to be there. As FaZe play against more and more tier 1 opponents, they're going to look better and better because they'll win some of them and lose some of them, which is what they would do, in my opinion, against tier 2 teams as well. Because they have a naturally inconsistent style of play, just because of the crackhead energy.
yeah. I mean,
But-
Babybase said just that actually in the interview
Oh, did
after
he?
the one game. He said that that's their biggest problem is that they feel like they can turn up against top teams, but they're just wildly inconsistent against the tier 2 teams. Like when they're just like, yeah, we don't know how to. Or he said that like against those teams, we know how they play, but when we play a team like Ninja's team that we've never played before, they get lost in the sauce and they just lose. They just lose to these teams. Those are my words. I don't think he said that, but that's basically what he was saying. That he if they know how a team plays, they feel comfortable and confident. But against a team like Ninjas, they're just lost because they don't know how they play.
Yeah. And I think that just shows to me that they don't have a style themselves. They're just trying to play around their opponent's styles too. Like they don't have the fundamentals there. But what I was going to say is FaZe are already a top 10 team in NA. You can have them, I don't know, somewhere around anywhere from the 7th to 10th, I think, is quite reasonable for them. But they are missing so much from their game. So much is still missing from FaZe. As they start to add that stuff, that's the secret sauce that's missing, the actual fundamentals of playing Valorant, the ceiling on this team is still really good. Like they could become a really, really good team as long as they sort these things out over time. Like 2021 is still looking pretty decent for this squad. They've shown towards the end of this year an ability to get wins without having worked on any of the stuff that we wanted them to work on. Like they have somehow managed to scrape W's together without working on anything that is clearly, evidently wrong with their game. And so once you fix the clear and obvious stuff, if you bring in some coach that can fix some obvious stuff with that team, I don't want to say the sky's the limit because I still don't think they're going to be like top 3 in NA, but they can start pushing towards top 5 kind of area, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move on to.
We're not going to give a
topic.
shout out to Ninja's team
You
for
want to
beating FaZe. I mean, we don't need to spend 20 minutes on it, but I do think it's just worth mentioning that they got a good win over FaZe.
Yeah,
they were well prepared.
I'm gonna try
They
and pull a
showed up.
slasher trying to at Ninja for the clout. You know?
Yeah, he is the best multi-game competitor we've ever seen. 100%. But I mean, to be fair, it is impressive to essentially have like a pug team play a lot. So like, sure, I'll give him that. But also like, you throw FaZe against any squad that has people that have a mouse and keyboard, and like Josh was talking about, they'll maybe lose, they'll maybe win. Like we'll have to see. So I don't think it's like the craziest result ever.
Yeah.
But
They're
put
not a
Ninja in the
bad
title
roster.
anyways, so we get the YouTube views there. Just put it.
I think if Timon was in the other group, they could have beaten Cloud9.
Yeah, I think that's
Should that be
very
the next
possible.
topic?
Oh yeah, well, yeah. I mean, let's
talk about Cloud9.
Let's get into it.
Because they've replaced Shinobi. These are the rumors
Well,
that we had going on.
No, these aren't the rumors. Oh well,
Well,
yeah,
they were the rumors.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Not anymore, because they replaced him with Leaf, who up and coming NACS 16-year-old prodigy.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of
17.
sense, doesn't it? To replace your in-game leader with a 16-year-old mechanically skilled
And then, Bren, I would go even
17-year-old?
further. It makes the most sense to replace him with a mechanically skilled prodigy who you then put on a mixture of Cypher and Breach.
Well,
that makes the most sense.
I mean, okay, here's the thing about it. It's pretty much been said at this point. Well, Tens had to
clarify.
He had to clarify and address some of the things that Shinobi was saying on our show, because some people were taking some of the things Shinobi said to like the worst place you could take them, in terms of like
being out of context.
Yeah, being out of context and like negative towards his teammates, or Tens was doing something egotistical on the team, which is not what Shinobi was actually trying to get at, but some people took it to that conclusion. So Tens had to address that. And in that, he had said that he didn't want Shinobi off the team, and that it wasn't really his decision.
I don't think it was any of the players' decision.
No.
This does not strike me as a player decision whatsoever.
It clearly was not. And to further reinforce that, I saw on the Valorant competitive Reddit, someone had posted C9 Jack, the owner of C9, posting in the JBL Twitch chat, because he was upset that they were streaming Ninja's team versus FaZe instead of Cloud9 versus TSM, and he's like, you're gonna miss the hype debut of Leaf on C9 for this? Which clearly says to me that that was like he really wanted Leaf on this team, and he's excited to see him play, to just further reinforce that this is clearly like a higher up decision that was made. And the Chaos team was doing very well in NACS, and Chaos could no longer support that team or sponsor them. Their contracts ended, and all those players are just kind of going their separate ways at this point, it seems. And Leaf is one of the hottest prospects in CS. And so I think the organization, the higher ups at C9, they just saw that and said, okay, Leaf is on the way up, and let's get him.
Leaf has also trialed with them at the beginning of Cloud9. He trialed on like an early iteration of the team with was it Corey? They had somebody from FaZe as well
it was
going
Corey,
to join. Tens has tweeted something out here as well about that. But I do not believe that this roster change makes sense, honestly.
It's such a scoreboard Steven change.
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't make sense at all.
So, but I want to kind of run through like why I don't think it makes sense, because there's a lot of reasons that you could there's a lot of arguments you could make for this change. Shinobi wasn't a fragger. We know that. I've talked about that. I've tweeted about that. I've talked about that in multiple tournaments. Talked about it in the next tournaments. I was surprised when he actually did frag, and then I went back to not being surprised when he didn't frag again. So that is well known. It has been documented thoroughly and excruciatingly at this point. Shinobi doesn't really frag, but the idea that you can just replace him on the team ignores the wider issues that Cloud9 was having, especially when it comes to their agent pools and their agent roles and like the actual style of the team. Now, you could make an argument, I think, that if Leaf was a superstar duelist player, that shifts Relics over to like the smoke and IGL role, where he doesn't have to frag as much, because now you have Tens and you have Leaf, who are both going to be putting forth like these massive numbers in theory. So then you would push Vice back over to the Vice would stay in his role as like the Sova Breach kind of player, and Mitch would have to pick up Cypher. That is the only way in which a single change could be transformative for Cloud9, because then you actually have solved the firepower issue. Relics doesn't really have to be the big secondary fragger when he plays the smoke, so the inconsistent play that he previously had put up doesn't make too much of a difference anymore. It doesn't really matter who between Vice and Relics was IGLing. I assumed it was be Relics, but turns out it's actually Vice. But it still relies on multiple things going well. Leaf has to be a really sick duelist. Relics has to be comfortable on the smokes when he goes back to them, rather than being wildly inconsistent like he had been a little bit before in the past. And Mitch has to be able to play Cypher as well at a top level. That would all have to go really well for that to be a transformative move. Any other move you make, you run into the same shitty issues of Cloud9's roster not having the depth and flexibility to be able to accommodate something like that. Like the team comps they're running in this tournament made no sense whatsoever. They're still swapping people around based on whether or not they want to play Killjoy on the map. That makes no sense. That is a ridiculous way to run a team, I think, unless you've got some kind of all-star team that can play everything to a top level. You don't have that. Like that just, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think, well, one thing as well, if when you're considering Leaf on this roster, Leaf is not like a hardcore entry, hit every headshot player. That's not what he was providing in CS. He was typically at his best on the lurk. And Cloud9 already have an abundance of more passive players that are going to be in supportive roles. And I would agree that I think one of the main issues still, is what are the other players on the team going to be playing? Because Relix was clearly at his best when he was on Raze, being the second star player of the team. When he was on Omen, he would have some rounds here and there where he'd pull off some magical 3-4K, but overall, he was pretty fine. I don't think Vice has ever really looked particularly standout. This is me talking in terms of fragging, because in terms of the support that Vice brings, his Breach utility was really excellent, and I think Breach was probably his best role so far.
Agreed.
But his forte was his utility usage and the way he was setting up tens. When he is on other agents, I don't think he's really at the same top level as the counterparts on the. I mean, if we're rating Cloud9 as like a top 5, top 6 team, something along those lines.
I mean, they have previously been top 3. Like that
yeah,
is what
so if we're putting them up there,
frankly, they should be aiming for titles. They have tens on their team.
The problem for me has remained the same for quite a long time. And it's that the supporting cast of tens overall is not good enough. It's not just Shinobi. Like none of the other guys, except for when Relix was on Raze, they're not providing enough value to the team as the counterparts on those roles of the other like top 5 teams. I don't know if you would rate any of those players higher than the players on those roles on the other top 5 teams. I just don't think that.
I mean,
I don't think.
So is this a mall for Shinobi? So let's boil it down here then, right? Because it's pretty obvious that the Shinobi move for everyone, it seemed like was not going to be an immediate solution, right? It was not going to be an immediate solution to the problem. In fact, it could be it made it worse, like it looks like it has here. So is this essentially just once again us saying, are we mad over Shinobi being replaced, or is it more mad of YC9 making changes but not just replacing the whole roster around tens? Because I think Leaf has a promise, right? He's young. He hasn't played a lot of Valorant. He's been still in CS until very recently. I don't think that Leaf is a terrible pickup for C9.
Oh, no,
definitely not.
Yeah. Like Leaf is not an overall bad pickup at all if they want to commit to Leaf playing Valorant for them. It's more of this roster probably just needs to be retooled totally then at that point.
I would say that you needed to make minimum 2 changes to Cloud9. Like my issue with this change
100%.
is not that. My issue with this change is not that Shinobi got removed. It's that Shinobi has been removed as like a scapegoat for the team, and they have totally ignored the bigger issues with the roster. Like they've just gone, cut the lowest fragging player. That'll work. It's just so nonsensical that is your solution. Whereas a more reasonable solution might have been, I don't even mind which 2 supporting players you keep. I think you probably keep Vice, because Vice looked good in a supporting role. Plus, he has the flexibility to play like the Cypher if you need him to, or to play the Sova Breach. I think Vice is a pretty well-rounded support player. From there, if you really believe in Relix and you think that he can play the smokes and IGL or whatever, which it turns out they're not even going with because Vice is IGLing, then keep Relix and cut Shinobi. Don't mind that. But my inclination would have been to keep Shinobi and Vice and try and let Shinobi's IGLing run its course. And if at some point you need to make a change, you then can, and you can try and slot somebody else into that role. But I just don't understand how you're going to make a functioning system with Relix and Mitch unless you have another superstar duelist player on your team. Yeah. Because unless Leaf takes on the role of being a superstar duelist player, like so that you have like MW0 and John on your team. Like unless it's that kind of level of performance, the other 3 aren't good enough support players.
And I don't think that's going to happen though. Like Leaf has the potential, I think, to be one of those guys who is in a support role, but also he can make magic happen. But he is going to be in a more supportive lurking role, but he can have huge impact rounds, which is really what you want from the people in those roles. Ideally, they can support the teammates. They can also clutch up and pull off some sick frags when the time comes for that. But I don't think he's not going to be in a superstar duelist role. Maybe he could be. I mean, he certainly has the potential where if they put him on that role and give him some time, maybe he could be. But I think that I think that part of the issue as well overall is that one thing people are going to say is, well, this was their first tournament, give them some time. I don't think that time is going to particularly help this exact roster very much, because my worry is now, how do they adjust as the metas evolve, as updates come, new agents, etc.? Who is pushing the team forward strategically? I don't know. I just don't. That is something that worries me. Is not just what's happening now. It's more so down the line.
Well, let's say then for Leaf, then hypothetically, if we're not saying that, what's the best case scenario for C9, right? In this case, and they made this move. Let's just ignore the fact that it's very likely they haven't solved any of their overarching issues. But if we're going to take one positive here, then Jack doesn't blacklist us forever from everything, because we're saying, I'm just kidding. But like, the thing is that what is the positive move here? And I think the positive move here is that tens is like tens. It's tens, like the guy's an entry fragger. He sort of fits that role. Like if we were to most likely compare it to like TSM when they're at their best, right? Because you've got Wardell and then Sabrosa. Is Leaf the Sabrosa for this team potentially, or no?
I mean, I think he has the potential to be. Yeah, sure. I think that's not unreasonable.
I mean, the best case scenario is the extra fragging power of Leaf coming in propels them forward. Is it Vice who's taking over the IGL lead? Yeah. Vice somehow takes over the IGL lead without dropping his individual performance as well, which probably isn't going to happen. And it's happily ever after. They finish in top 3 again in a tournament and not at number 1.
But also, you're kind of glossing over some details there, because not only does that have to happen, but also they have to sort out the roles in a way that actually works for them.
The biggest
Vice
issue
has
is
to learn a new role.
It all comes back. It all comes back to the point, which was like, this is a decision made from the scoreboard. This is a fucking Reddit Andy. I'm in charge of an org. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at the KDA numbers and I'm going to make changes based off of that. You can't just plug and play in players from CS. You got to think about the actual roles that they are going to be playing on, inhibiting as well. Like this. I don't know. Cloud9's got to be playing musical chairs now with the roles to try and get it in a way that's going to work, and it's going to take them far too long. And by the time they finally figure it out, every other team is going to be getting way better as well. Like it's so short-sighted. Is the overall look.
What really is the best look for this team now with Leaf? Like
I think you put him.
They tried a bunch of different stuff. So they tried Mitch playing Sage, like he used to way back in the day, with Relics on Smokes, Vice on Sova, and then Leaf slotted in on Cypher, which is insanely strange. Then they also tried what I thought would be like the more classic option for them, which is Tens and Relics on DPS, and then Mitch playing the Killjoy and Leaf on Breach, with Vice moving over to Smokes, which, I mean, at that point, you're just swapping so many player roles. Plus, then Mitch has to also learn Cypher. It's so weird. And then they actually did try one as well. When they played against Sentinels on Icebox, Leaf played Reyna. And they had Tens and Leaf on Duelist. And then this was the comp that I thought they would run when they played Icebox, where Leaf was playing Duelist. But that was Icebox and they lost 13-3. But that's Icebox, isn't it?
I mean, I really don't know. Maybe you put Mitch on the Jett again and have Tens play like the Reyna on, and then Relics on Smoke. Then you have Vice on Cypher, where he's experienced on that, and then have Leaf on the Breach. I don't know. I think the issue is there's no comp that you can come up with where you feel confident in where you're putting every player on this roster at the moment. Unless, I think what can change is once we see more of this team and we see Leaf in a position where he's really flourishing, and then it's like, oh, that's what he's playing. Okay. Like, I think that they should probably be trying to build around what he wants to play and what he feels comfortable on.
Yeah.
Because if anyone is going to step up and be a real another star on this team, it should be him at this point.
Yeah,
I
it
think,
has to be, really,
so,
doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, oh yeah, that is also true. Yeah, I think it has to be. So I think you put him on what he feels comfortable on and what he feels he has the most impact on, and then you try to build around him. I mean, the other three guys on the team just need to be doing their best to support Tens and Leaf.
I mean, it's just C9 1.1, you know, it's just a new patch version of C9, which just now, okay, you have only Tens to support, but also you have Leaf now, which ideally they should support too. I think Wyatt's right there. You got to build around what Leaf's going to play, what Leaf wants to play.
I'm just disappointed, honestly. I really am. I think that this was just I just don't think this was the change. I'm just disappointed to see it.
This was the easy way out.
I think you either make sweeping changes or just keep going, because Cloud9, despite the lack of fragging on, I think, 3 of their players, and sometimes 4, they were still competing in one of the top slots in the region. And at one point, at the beginning, at first strike, first qualifier, they looked like the best team in NA. They had a sick run. And I think that they either should have just kept it and kept going. And I think that, if anything, they needed more of like maybe a presence in the team that was guiding them in the right way with what roles they were running and like what things were working, and someone to say like, no, guys, that was working. Don't change X, Y, and Z with the comp because of this loss. Like, someone who can recognize what was working for the team and keep them on that. Or you have to make more changes than just this, because just this one change, I don't think is significant enough to make them that much better. Like, is this change really going to put them in the #1 spot? Like, I think you either keep the guys you have and build with it, or you're gunning for #1. You are putting together a #1 roster. Is this really going to be the one change that makes you the #1 roster? I think that's so far-fetched. It's not going to happen with one change. You have to. So I'm pretty disappointed in this switch.
My biggest issue with this swap is not necessarily the swap itself, like but it's the lack of a vision. It is the complete and utter lack of what they wanted after Shinobi had been removed. Like, we saw them trialing like Profi, for example, and then they end up on Leaf. They don't have a good idea of what Leaf's role should be. They've tried him on 3 different roles in the first tournament running so far. They don't have an idea of where their team should be. They didn't cut Shinobi because they had a vision for the future. They cut Shinobi and then they thought, oh shit, what are we doing for the future? Like, they asked that question after they had made the decision. That makes no sense. If you're going to make roster moves, you should always have an idea of why you're making the move. Like,
I think their vision was pretty clear, Josh, though, honestly, because you've already talked about it. You've already hinted on it. Shinobi didn't frag. Leaf can frag. Now, obviously, we don't know where he can frag in what role just yet, but he can frag. We know that Leaf can frag, and I honestly think it's probably that simple. And
I think it was that simple.
To move us along from this topic, because we are just fucking beating a dead horse. I mean, the Cloud9 fans are just punching the fucking air right now. They're just like, oh, it's not over for us, please. I mean, yeah, in conclusion, make smarter decisions, Cloud9, because the prospects don't look good. Let's talk about NRG, because this is a team that's also making weird decisions. Koler's been benched.
Remember what I said at the last episode? I said, NRG is not a team that was in that category, but like, if you finish in the top 8 of your region, you shouldn't make any. And there's even more examples that we're going to talk later in this episode looking at the list. But NRG definitely had to make changes, I think.
Is
Koler the change?
Yeah. I mean, it's all but confirmed.
It's not confirmed yet, but he's
with
been
them. He posted that he signed the classic gif of like the I'm signed or
Did
whatever.
he do like the Simpsons gif of like it's signed?
Yeah, classic gif. Yeah, yeah. The
classic gif. Yes, of course. This is another example of like we were already malding over this before, but I don't think Koler was the swap here for NRG either. I don't think Koler was the swap.
Yep, there it is. That's the one. Yeah. It's official. That's the one. Yeah, I mean, Well, what's striking about this move is that obviously Koler's mechanics were incredible. He was making magic happen on rounds with just raw skill alone, and it seemed like he was the type of player who had a lot of potential, because I think that there were still a lot of there was just a lot for him to work on in terms of his gameplay and what he was doing, but his raw skill was so incredible that it was like, okay, if this guy just gets the right system around him, he could be a legit star in the scene. So to bench him seems sort of striking. And this does, to some extent, seem like a move, I feel, from NRG, where they're just thinking like, okay, well, this guy gets a lot of viewers, so we should probably get him in. And aside from that, Shanks is one of the best free agents right now. So, and I do think where it makes sense.
He has proven tournament success too. Like, right, you can look at his energy and be like, okay, this guy's popular, he frags, and like he has success in tournaments. But like, absolutely, okay, cool. So does a bunch of other players. So I guess we're just gonna swap them all out.
Bro, can you imagine being Packington and Gumbo right now? The NRG's just given you a literal free Bugatti for this player, and he's immediately gone on the bench. Like, he got no value out of him as well. You've just, as NRG, you have paid a lot of money for the buyout for Koler, and then you have just tried him for a bit and thought, oh, fuck, he doesn't work at all, and immediately sat him on the bench for somebody else.
How many viewers is he getting?
That is incredible. That is the hustle of a lifetime from the Immortals staff.
It is. But I will say where this move also does actually make some sense to me is that when I think of Som, I don't think of he should be on opping Jett. Like, Som's talent is his rifling. So I think having him on a more rifle-heavy array of duelists, more in that Phoenix Raze spot, makes sense to me. And then you have Shanks come in, as he is, more than anything, he is the opping Jett, right? So I think that their actual duelist roles will be a bit more comfortable. Do I think that this is the change that is going to just immediately take them over the top? I mean, I don't think so. But I actually do think it's like a minor improvement, maybe. But I am disappointed that they didn't feel comfortable with Koler and trying to develop him further as a player. I mean, now he's just a ridiculously skilled player just on the market now. Someone
he's on the bench, isn't he?
Yeah, he's bench.
Yeah.
Someone would have
he's
to buy
technically
him out,
benched, but he's under contract, says that. I imagine NRG is hoping they can. I mean, who knows, right? Because there's a lot of reasons for teams to do things like this. I mean, honestly, it could be NRG wants to sell Koler. It could be NRG wants to. Who knows? We don't have the full insight, but maybe Koler could be needing to be benched, right? But also, it's like, does he really need to be benched here? And also, like Wyatt said, it's a side grade. I feel like you've gotten essentially a Koler that already knows how to play Valorant with Shanks. Is how I feel at times.
I know what Josh is kind of about to say.
Okay, go on, Josh.
I'm saying he's been benched. He's not going to be released as a free agent because they're desperately trying to recoup some of their losses. They're trying to get at least a Fiat Punto out of this after selling a Bugatti over to Immortals. They want to claw back anything that they've spent.
I thought you were going to say, how funny would it be if he just ended up back on Immortals?
Bought him back.
C9 buys Koler too. What if we just add Koler to C9 as well? Just keep replacing everyone. Just get another duelist player. Why not? Triple duelist for C9.
I love this entire thing. It just shows to me that NRG did not have a good idea, again, like a vision of what they wanted to do with their team. They wanted to play with Koler, but then Koler was playing duelist, a role that he hadn't played before, that doesn't suit his style. The only thing that Koler suits duelist for is his mechanics. That's the only thing. Like, he isn't someone who naturally is trying to take a bunch of space and entry onto sites. He isn't someone who understands like really intelligent peak timings and how to put pressure on his opponents super well. Like, he's more slow and lurky, if anything, rather than an entry kind of guy. He just has nutty mechanics. So it doesn't either give him a ton of time and know that he needs a ton of time when you sign the guy for again, a bunch of money. This isn't just some person that they randomly signed from a no-org team. They paid a bunch of money for this guy, and they immediately have just gone, oh no, actually, never mind, we need somebody else. Like, I can't even imagine being NRG in this kind of scenario, because I don't understand how you can just pick up somebody that you've paid a lot for and not understand how to slot them into your team, and then when it doesn't work, how you just immediately drop them. It's crazy to me. It doesn't. The business behind it is ludicrous.
Yeah, going into the NRG team, I thought that the vision would be coming from Daps. That was sort of my feel, because that's what he was known for in CS. Like, he would have a vision and he could put together a team with players who you might not expect to shine on roles that you might have never thought they'd really be on, and he would somehow puppeteer it and make it work. It just hasn't really come to fruition in Valorant as of yet. I think one of the issues is still just that, to some extent, he's very new to the game. It's still
dazed.
Yeah, not wrong there. But I think that that is part of the issue, and it seems like they're just catching up a lot slower than someone like Dazed. And I think as well that they missed out on signing a guy like F's. I mean, that roster was their best look so far. Not that it had them in the top 10 or anything, but at least with that roster, it looked like they were starting to build out an understanding of how they were playing the game and approaching it. And I'm not really, I mean, who knows what they're going to do with this final position. I would honestly hope that they still give it to F's, but
yeah. Who knows? You want to talk about Europe?
Okay.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Who? Benching Davidp.
Oh my God. We are
Well,
getting
not benching. Did they just
juice.
release him?
No.
They benched him?
Well, they haven't announced anything yet. This is a report from Nell. But as far as I'm aware, that guy is like 100%. What he says always happens.
Right.
Another wild move, right? I mean,
This
if it's G2 and they finished top 8 in the region, like we said, like if you finish top 8, I don't feel like you had to necessarily make roster moves. There's so many roster moves in Europe already. But Davidp being benched, is there like an internal issue with him?
You all say there was no need to make roster moves, but I said that there were going to be moves because these rosters are aiming for the number 1 spot. They're not aiming for top 8. They're aiming for the number 1 spot. They're going to want to make adjustments after every major tournament. And this one, I mean, I can only theorize that. I mean, I don't know. I feel like Davidp was a very serviceable member of the team. You know what I mean? Like he played his role
I think
well.
Davidp was beyond serviceable for them.
He played his role well of what they needed him.
Yeah.
So I don't really understand where this is coming from, and I can only go on, Josh.
I think that this role, I think,
and there's Sage buffs around the corner too. I'm sorry, go on, Josh.
I think G2 didn't have to make this change, but heading into next year, I do think that it's a reasonable one for them to make. It's like, it's the one I can get most behind. Originally, this report said that Pith was also going to be traded too. And apparently there's been some decision for that not to occur. Or, perhaps they were wrong as well, but it seems like G2 were considering making much larger changes. The Davidp one I can get on board with for a couple of reasons. Davidp seemed like he was much less comfortable on every other hero than Sage. Like, not a true Sage one trick by any means, but way better on Sage than his other roles. Like, the stuff he was doing on Sage was a lot better than what he was able to perform on his other agents. So that kind of limits you a bit. Davidp also was the guy that was really struggling to change his playstyle across these matches. Like, constantly over-peaking and over-facing. Really wants to try and get aggressive at all times, and didn't seem to have like that other gear to him to slow things down. And when it worked spectacularly. And Davidp looked like a star player that was able to have so much impact on the match. But it also specifically hurt them in first strike. So I can understand why they would want somebody who can, temper that a little bit too. But the main reason I think is that G2 for so long have been struggling with their IGLing. They have not had a dedicated IGL. And Davidp was their attempt at having somebody really pick up that role in a heavy way. They started off with Artist being the main macro caller. That shifted over to Moramobi on Davidp, and it didn't work out. Their performances towards the end of First Strike were in no way more structured than their performances in Ignition. They haven't become a more structured team. They're still a very good team, but they still play loosely, and they're trying to push out and gather information and use that for the mid-round calls. It's a lot of like adapting during the middle of the round and adapting to their opponent. And it seems to me like G2 just actually wants somebody that can give them a bit more structure, someone that's going to have a bit more of like a literal IGL role on their team. So I think you have to find like the perfect player to replace Davidp, but I think this could be a positive move for them.
Could be.
I'm of the opinion that like, and I agree, Bren, like all teams are going to move after every major to just try to be number one. But the reality is G2 is so good for so long, right? And sure, you can't balance your whole team around. And you're right, Josh, that like Davidp, I feel like he's not like Lau, I think, where you can put him off the stage and if you wanted to, and he'd probably still do really good. He's a little bit more limited, I think. But there's Sage buffs right around the corner. On top of that, I do think that there's a lot of room for G2 to still there's still a process there where like the results are good enough. The cookie dough there is so good that like you could bake it into spectacular treats. You know, you can make a really good team. We've seen a really good team out of G2. And for me and for Davidp, for them to have to find the perfect player, right? That's a big ask to find the perfect player to replace Davidp. I feel like they're this early in a game's life cycle where everyone essentially has just started playing the game too, and you've had so much success. Yes, you know, you want to find, and since we're sort of going into an off season of sorts between 2020 to 2021, there is a really good window of opportunity for teams to make moves. But if you're G2 and you've already had so much success and you potentially see a meta entering that's favorable for you and you have time to work on your flaws, I don't really see the need to potentially, because who knows if they ever get another player that's going to be as good as Davidp, or at least going to slot to the squad as well, right? Like you have options to just sort of wait it out a bit and build this squad and fix it versus trying to just see if you can make a better team and maybe not building one.
I think this is the time, though. If you wanted to make a shift, you would make it before 2021. Because as much as you say teams will want to change after every major, honestly, the way that the system is set up, you don't want to be making changes after every tournament. You only want to be making changes if you didn't get very many points at all. But because it's a points-based circuit, you kind of want to lock in the majority of your roster for the whole year. And if you make, a top 4 finish, you don't want to tear the thing to pieces, because if you get top 4 finishes the whole way through, you're probably in if there are other teams that are more inconsistent. So to me, I think now is the right time. Like if you believe there's a core problem with your team, you fix it now. And I can see how if you're involved in G2, you might believe there is a bit of a core problem. Even though you've been able to get wins really well, you are getting overtaken by teams that now have better strats and better structure, and you seem to be failing to keep up. That's why every analyst had G2 losing first strike. We all thought they would lose it in the finals to FPX or something like that. But I don't really know that many people who were saying G2 was the favorite to win, weirdly, even though they'd won every Ignition series, because you could see it in the water. You could see the fact that this team was getting overtaken. And that's what they want to stop, I think. They want to act preemptively to stop themselves getting overtaken.
Yeah, I actually think this is a good time for them to make a move, and I'm not mad at it at all. I love the way David plays, and I think that his Sage is one of the best. One of the issues that always stuck out to me and was worrying me was how he would progress as the game changed and his impact on other roles, and I just don't think that he was finding the same impact as he was in those early Ignition series days, playing that flanking Sage lurking style. I just don't think he was able to succeed at the same level on the other agents he was playing. And that's something that worried me for the future. I think this is a good time to make a move. Post first strike, you got to see at least formulate an idea of who some of the upcoming players are and who's performing. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a better time for them to make a move than now. So I think it's fine to do something preemptively.
Now, having said that as well, I have no idea who they should pick up for this role. Like back to Avast's point, finding the perfect player here is so important because it needs to be someone who can IGL. And in theory, it can be a bunch of different roles. Like each player to directly slot into like Davidp's position. It could be a Sova player, honestly, and then you move Artist over to Duelist or Breach, because he would be very comfortable playing that in that position. Or you could just pick up another Duelist, I think, and be playing the double Duelist, and then Artist picks up the Sova or the Breach as needed. So they're flexible in terms of that, but I just don't know who they should pick up. There's no names that spring to mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird scenario. It's not. It's also not like the NA Valorant scene where you can just poach players from CS because it's dead. In that region, it's in EU. CS is still kicking, so it's
pay a $4 million
you
buyout.
don't
You could
have
get
that
somebody.
luxury of
Maybe you do maybe the EU. Maybe they bring an NACS player over to EU with the big brain, the reverse poaching here, the reverse which is theoretically possible, but like. To me, I just look at this, and because of how EU Valorant is currently structured, is like unless G2 does like they really hit the pavement, put their ear to the ground. I there are players I think they could find because they are flexible for sure. Like they're lucky in that G2's roster is so flexible and they don't have to worry about the rules. But I just wonder who they get to fill.
I'm racking my brains now, and I can come up with a couple of ideas. I think. I mean. Well, actually, yeah. The problem is always trying to figure out who actually IGLs for teams, because a lot of these tier 2 teams, I have no idea who calls for them. And so while you can always find a fit for somebody that would slot in really nicely to G2, it doesn't necessarily solve the IGL issue. And, the instant people that spring to my mind, though, are the people involved in Prodigy, Orgless. Because they have 2 people on that team who are pretty comfortable with IGLing, Happy and Pipson. Now, it would be mental for Happy to go over to that team. I don't really think that that's likely, but who knows? But I wonder if they're considering people like Pipson, because Pipson is, as far as I'm aware, the IGL of that team, and he has played a bunch of different roles in the past too. He not only does he play Sentinel for his team, but he's also played Breach for them at various different times, and the Brimstone when it comes to like certain maps too. I think he plays that for them on Split or something. So I could see them opting for somebody like that, like a tier 2 caller that's been on the come up.
Yeah, maybe.
Though I will say, in the case of G2, like if you want to compare it to Cloud9, there's such a stark difference in the calling structure, I would imagine, on those teams, where I don't think, I don't know, do you feel that they need as hard of an IGL as a team like Cloud9? Because I don't feel that that's the case.
These teams, I feel like they're more agile with their calling
because G2 are such an agile, loose team.
I feel like it is.
I'm not as worried about that with
making.
them.
But I do think that they need some more structure. Like the fact that they don't really have any set plays or set ideas coming into. Well, they do occasionally, but their general plan is to not have some big set play for the round. Like, I think that they need to add some of that and some structure. And plus, they need somebody in the server who can make the adjustments and be the final say on it. Because even though they're pretty good at adjusting to opponents and figuring stuff out, that comes from like individual players calling things about their side of the map and what they can do to exploit those areas. It doesn't come from like a big macro point of view.
Maybe they just signed Shinobi.
Let's read the fucking tea leaves, huh?
Yeah.
I'll figure it out. Don't you worry. I'll give you guys an update next week. Meddo is no longer on FPX. That's a fucking bonkers move, isn't it? EU's making all sorts of moves. It's a shame nobody cares about it. The region itself, I mean, this is kind of wild. I mean, expected after their loss in First Strike, maybe? In terms of them making changes,
so.
I'm not saying the player. I'm not saying the player.
Yeah.
But in terms of them making changes,
I didn't think they
expected?
would. I didn't expect that, honestly.
I'm surprised.
They strike me as the team that would have been their intuition would have been to like, all right, let's just hit the drawing board, reset. What did we do wrong, and move from there. They didn't necessarily strike me as the team that would make a roster switch that quickly. Which sort of signals that they're attributing the issues they had in First Strike and the loss to some extent from having Meddo on the roster. Is a bit shocking, I think.
I don't think that is the case, though, because their coach came out and said that it wasn't a reactionary move, that this move was already being planned before first strike.
Oh, really?
Now,
Okay.
whether that was actually told to the players is different and unlikely, in my opinion, because you don't want to like boom someone's morale right before first strike.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to find the tweet now.
And also, if that's even true to begin with, too, because, you could have teams sort of thinking about it like, oh, maybe Meddo's not fitting our style. Because I think that's what they sort of said, right? There was a stylistic difference between Meddo and the rest of the squad. And that's why they felt like it was necessary to move on. It wasn't a performance issue. It was just they didn't feel like it was making them better with Meddo on the roster. But to me, it's sort of sometimes you can have teams being like wishy-washy. It's like, well, is Meddo going to stay with us? I don't know. And then you lose first strike. And it's like, yeah, okay, Meddo, like, you're gone. So they've been thinking about it, but is it really? Was that a serious thought, or was it sort of cemented by losses in first strike? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that either, but I do know that their coach. Oh my god, I cannot find this coach's tweet anywhere. But he tweeted out, and he said something like that the reason that they signed the reason that they wanted to make this shift with Meddo was something that they had thought about for a while. It wasn't a reaction to their first strike losses, and it was because of pace and play style. Those were the two words that he used.
Yeah.
Which to me, I've always known that Meddo was a very slow player. All of the other players talk about it as well. Like if Meddo's left as the last alive at the end of some round, you'll hear like the G2 or Liquid guys when they're streaming themselves with comms being like, oh, classic, Meddo's the last one alive. Like, watch out for him. He could be anywhere because he's not helping the rest of his team. He's just on some weird lurk or weird bait kind of play. But I never thought that actually hurt FPX. Like, I've never watched FPX and gone, oh, Meddo's like hardcore baiting here. They're really missing him in these team fights. He's not active enough on the extremities, whatever. Like, it actually, in my opinion, contrasted quite nicely to how aggro Angel and Shao and Zipan are. That's a very aggro trio in your front line for FPX when you're actually hitting a site. So, to me, I don't know. You don't need everyone to be aggressive and high tempo at all times. I'm not really sure. I don't get this move.
I mean, it could be they want to morph their, like, because you could have like sometimes it's like that saying, it's better to whole ass something the wrong way and versus half ass a bunch of different other options. And maybe they feel like they'd rather have someone that's going to be a little bit more aggressive or supportive on their lurks. It's not that I also agree. I don't think Meddo was hardcore baiting at times, but it definitely did have that tendency to be the last player alive, or maybe was looking for some sort of like long lurk. And maybe they want someone that's actually going to be a bit more supportive on these crazy pushes. What is just laughing over this one?
This is profile picture. Meddo's profile picture.
I don't think there's any discussion about Meddo being one of the best Sentinels in the whole of Europe, the world though as well. Like the guy is insanely talented. But yeah, to me, like the only reason I can think as to why you would genuinely want to remove Meddo is that he's not very, when you're on your attacking rounds, Meddo isn't the guy to go and push an area on his own, like someone like Dapper or Para or FNS or, a bunch of these other really elite, or Steel, these top level Sentinels players who will take an area of the map, dominate it with utility, and then continue to push it and create pressure there, which relieves pressure on other areas of the map. Like, I don't really think that Meddo did that too much on attack. And it meant that Angel had to do a lot of the lurking, but also the entrying. Like, you would say Angel was their second entryer after Zipan. But also, if you were to try and say who is the lurker on FPX, you'd probably say Angel as well. Because in some of the rounds, it's Angel who's creeping into bomb sites and doing that kind of stuff, just playing contact or be long on bind.
I don't see why that's a reason though to cut Meddo. Is that not something that can be changed through coaching, like stylistic differences, or like you want them to play in a specific manner? Is something that I think is what you get coaches for. It's what they should be aiming towards, is trying to adapt a player to a specific role.
I would assume that I would assume that they've tried, or at least communicated that they want him to do more of that, but he hasn't, and so they've decided it's easier to get a replacement.
To get a replacement? Yeah, I mean, it's just such a bizarre player. I don't know. That's a weird move. Trying to find somebody to play up to the same level as Meddo and also fulfill.
But I feel like we've had that same conversation with Davidp. You know,
Yeah.
like we're
Yeah.
having that same exact conversation, right? Like, and who knows? There probably are players that can fill them, but because there's just so little footage on some of the squads in tier 2 and even tier 3, like, you know, who really knows exactly of like what talent might be available? There probably is talent. I mean, it's a new game,
Oh, yeah.
but
There is. There 100% is. I mean, especially when it comes to Meddo, in my opinion, because, okay, for Davidp, you need to fill someone that's like an IGL for the team. That is a very specific niche role. But to replace Meddo, you want somebody that can play Sentinel to a top level and who is a little more active. I mean, there are just tons of people like that. There are so many. Like Europe is just full of little crackhead Sentinels players. So I think they can. I think they can fill this role more easily than G2 can fill theirs.
All right. This next topic's pretty interesting. Ninjas in pajamas. They benched LuckeRRR. And it says they benched Sayf as well, but presumably they dropped Sayf.
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
Sayf has gone back to Guild.
yes, I think they benched him though, and Guild bought him out.
Okay.
If I had to
Believe
guess,
it's
I don't
still,
think they've actually dropped it.
I think that was still just being reported, though, right? Like it wasn't.
Yeah.
At least
So
they
Sayf returning to
didn't do
Guild
the
is
announcement.
reported.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But the
reputable,
actual-
reputable
right, okay,
reporting.
okay.
But so he's benched.
So he's
I mean, Sayf has already.
yeah.
Sayf has also just straight up said on his stream that he was benched.
Yeah.
So
okay.
yeah,
And they've also added
he said that.
Jady.
He said that Sayf has said on his stream that he and LuckeRRR are benched, and he also said he also confirmed that NIP was signing Jady as well. So Sayf was just like, yeah, sure, it's all true.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not entirely surprised about the LuckeRRR decision, though it is so strange that they sign a player the caliber of Sayf and then just benched right away. But I do wonder if the benching is just benched in quotes right now because in reality he just came to some sort of agreement where he wanted to return to Guild as a player, and they're just working that out behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But I do understand the reasoning for the LuckeRRR one. I do think he's struggled in terms of his consistency, and the player that they're looking to sign, Jady from however you pronounce the HSI DDR team name.
Yeah.
I mean that he has been a freak on that team, so I makes sense to me, honestly.
So apparently Sayf has been saying as well, again, lots of juice from Sayf streams. He said
let it rip.
he didn't like the role that NIP put him in. He's also tweeted about this as well, that he wanted to go back over to like a Sage Viper kind of role. You know, the more not really supportive, but like secondary fragging. He doesn't want to play entry. He wants to work off the back of other people playing entry. So he didn't really like the role that NIP had put him in. And then apparently he'd also taken up the mid-round calling because NIP had no real IGL. And so Sayf was doing a lot of that stuff for them. And he didn't have experience doing that previously too. So that might have also contributed to the idea that NIP wanted to bench him. Now, also, I don't have any faith in anything that NIP have ever done in Valorant. They have been a notoriously awful organization in Valorant so far. They have been rotating their players. I mean, if you pulled up the Wikipedia page for NIP, it would have a list of former players on it longer than most people's. I mean, look at this transaction history. It's so long. They have had so many fucking people on it. They've had some incredible talents on here as well. Zipan, Yassine, Bonka have been on this team. They've kind of ruined the talents that they have had, even when they've been good as well. They've had Firoth over here as well with Hip and that kind of French team that didn't go so well. Like they've never been a good team. They've just cycled through a bunch of good players. They've never been able to put them together into a functioning roster. This was the closest, but it's still just a carousel of players.
I do wonder as well if like a player like LuckeRRR would maybe just perform better within a better system, a more consistent system as well, because he clearly has the raw talent, I feel, but I just think I just don't. It's certainly possible to me that this was just not the right fit for him as a player, and he might find more success elsewhere anyhow.
I mean, Sayf is legitimately one of the players that you could say would be the best in Europe. If you were to like place a bet on somebody for 2021, if Sayf finds the right team, he could be the best player in EU. I totally believe that. He has all the skill set. He has the agent pool, he has the fragging, he has the intelligence and the awareness, the ability usage, all of it. Like, he is an elite level talent. And so the fact that NIP have had him and Zipan in particular, and then also Yassine as well on the same roster, and they've just let them out of their hands, this is really like an appalling usage of the talent that they have had available to them. And I just don't know what the future is for this roster. They don't look like they've got decent players on their roster still, but I have no faith in them to perform at any point.
Yeah. There's not much more to be said with that. I mean, I completely agree with that. I think NIF has been in this constant state of flux in EU Valorant of never really obtaining the top spots, but every time they do, I don't know. It's, yeah. Moving on.
They're like a consistent gatekeeping team.
Yeah.
They'll beat the bad teams just with the talent because they sign good players, but then they never have the system or the structure to be able to get into the actual elite.
So what do we make of Sayf returning to Guild?
I love it.
Yeah.
Big things.
We harken back. Remember when we did that global power ranking and I was just fighting tooth and nail for Bonk to be high up on the world ranking list? Because I really enjoyed watching Bonk play. And I think that they were a legit top contending team who were on the way up, and then that roster move just stifled them, just short of achieving greatness. And it was a tragedy. Yeah. So seeing this, I'm excited because Yassine and Sayf, that was a hell of a duo.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. They're just going to be good, I think, right? Like, I don't think we can be anything else than excited.
I mean, listen,
we can't. They're just going to be good.
He's not wrong.
They're just going to be good. More than unless there's like a catastrophic meltdown, like it's just going to be Guild just taking Sayf from NIP, and NIP continues to be sort of like a halfway home for good players as they before they move on to greater adventures.
I am kind of wondering who is going to pick up like the Sentinel in this team now at this point. I mean, maybe Bonkar fills out or something like that, or maybe Draken goes over to the role. But I'm just kind of they still have some role shuffles, but I don't feel bad about this team at all because their players have proven that they're mega good at whatever they play. Like, Leo has been fantastic at every role that he's played. Bonkar has been a very good supportive player to the rest of these Swedish players, and again, really competent on whatever role you put him on. And then the combination of Yassine and Sayf is just such a powerhouse duo, however you work it around. And then Draken's been pretty good too, actually. I think Draken was better than Goff. I think they've got the right player there from their most recent acquisitions. I think Guild are making all the right moves.
Yeah.
All the right moves.
And it just,
go
on.
I'm not going to say anything relevant to this team.
Okay. Go on.
Okay.
Josh, you know that smell when you take the Christmas tree out of the attic?
The smell of the Christmas tree?
Or it's like the smell of like the attic, I suppose, the loft, you know? The
resting
So you're asking.
dust.
So you're asking. Do you know what an attic smells like?
Yeah, but you know, like I always associate it with Christmas because I've just turned on heating AC.
Yeah.
For the first time in probably eons in this house.
Yeah.
And the smell reminds me of
the 70s.
Christmas.
Oh. I mean, because I can smell the 70s coming down.
I can smell Christmas.
Yeah.
I can smell like the
what
Christmas
does the 70s
tree.
smell like?
What is
Is
this?
it just like burnt up loft insulation?
Old.
Maybe,
probably.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it
Probably.
smells of like the settled remnants of a bygone era, and you're just you're dragging it up. You're dragging it up.
Exactly. That is precisely what I'm saying.
That's what it smells like.
You wordsmith, you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting quite nostalgic over here, but we can move on.
Nice.
Vitality is an auger entering Valorant.
Yeah.
What
big
game
org.
is Vitality in?
CS. I mean, they just
CS
won.
is a big one.
Mobile games? What they Clash Royale?
So they won a big CS tournament the other day.
I think they've got a really big Raid Shadow Legends theme.
Raid Shadow Legends? Oh,
I think
that's
they
a
have
big
some
one,
Fortnite
actually.
guys.
Oh wow!
But I mean,
they're coming into Valorant.
Yeah, they've.
Nice.
Well, I mean, they're makes sense. They're a huge deal in CS. They got Shocks, Zywoo.
Zywoo, yeah.
The big names.
I mean, Zywoo played a little bit of Valorant recently as well.
Yeah,
in
he
the
did.
tournament.
God, if he switched over to Valorant, that would be.
That would be bad. That would be CS already. It's looking a little ooh, and then if you start getting like Zywoo moving, that's a rough one.
EU's in a better state than NA though.
Yeah, for sure. But that's what I'm saying. It would be bad if Zywoo were to like.
I mean,
move.
we'll see. I mean, well, this isn't the this isn't Plat Chat Counter-Strike, but
Sure.
Yeah, no, it is not.
It can be.
This is interesting though. I'm hyped to see what roster Vitality put together. As we've seen in Europe, there's a bunch of really good unsigned talent. Like you could easily make another tier 1 roster if you pick up the right players.
Yeah.
And it seems like
Make a
Vitality have
couple.
got some pretty potent people to choose from. Again, there's the whole of like there's the whole of org list to choose from, right? That's Happy. I think Happy has actually played under Vitality before.
He has. I would not be surprised to see Happy on this roster because they typically.
I think Summon.
I mean, they
you
go
have
for the
Summon
French
as well to poach
players.
from if you wanted to.
Wow.
I hope
I don't
someone
know
gets
about
signed with the full team.
I mean,
I think they should be signed as a full team. Though,
the rumor is that Fnatic are signing Summon because I think the Fnatic owner he followed one of the players, so you know what that means. But that is the rumor. So
if that ends up being the case, eventually, at some point, it seems like it's like honestly like 60-70% of the time, probably higher. Honestly, if an org follows a player that's unsigned or is like on another team, and they weren't following before, it almost always leads to a roster transaction. And like at some point, orgs just need to learn to stop following people before the announcement happens. Like at some point.
Well, maybe we're getting it the wrong way around. We're assuming that they're signing the player and then they're following them on Twitter. Maybe they're following them on Twitter and just loving their tweets so much that they feel like they have to sign them. Maybe that's the way it works.
I think you're also thinking about this the wrong way though, because when you
don't say
you want the hype to be generated beforehand. These little rumors being spread. You know that some little Twitter gremlin is going to be scouring through the following and followers list.
Yeah.
And
so they're doing it deliberately.
Fnatic are getting involved into Valorant, and then the post is made, and the hype starts getting generated, and the ball gets rolling. We're talking about them.
Ooh, Reddit thread.
We're talking about them.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, the announcement's made, and like, I love this. The hype. That's how you generate the hype. You gotta, you wanna try and sell your streetwear.
Yeah, hoodie orgs.
I mean, the orgs are trying to do that. Right? Yeah. You're not wrong.
You guys stand on the same wavelength as me. But
I did think Vitality were going to make a full French roster, though, and it doesn't seem like it because they have an Israeli coach. Okay. He's a former Overwatch player, player and coach as well. He used to coach the Israeli teams over in Europe, like Zaka's way back in like 2017, and he's been coaching a bunch of other teams since then. Yeah, FragOn. I mean, not that I know too much about the guy, but I recognize the teams that he coached for when I looked him up on Wikipedia. So
yeah, would not be surprised if they at least try to go in a majority French direction. Seems to be the comfortable path for
and also
Vitality.
there's just a shit ton of talent, isn't there? Like the French talent in Valorant is everywhere. There's actually just been a French team announced like today. I just saw it pop up on VLR.
Oh, really?
With like Loki and Hip and Law. They've started a new team called Cave Canem.
Breaking news.
Yeah, there you go.
Breaking news. Can't see the roster because there's a cord in the way. Who do we have here?
Hip, Law, Apo, Loki, and Kagasi.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So
interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, this is just one of multiple French rosters that plays at like a tier 2 level.
Guys, let's sign them.
Yeah, I guess Cave Canem must mean like something in French about dogs.
We'll get the
I
research
wouldn't
done
know.
on that.
Chien is dog in French. Chien.
Yeah, I mean, translate from Latin. Oh, it's Latin for beware of the dog.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. Very fancy. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to talk about
that's nice. That's
nice
nice.
topic.
You guys want to talk about Korea
Okay.
Yeah.
as a region? Cloud9 have dropped their roster
Yeah.
in Korea. I mean, this was actually kind of expected to me because the early moves that Cloud9 they make this in a lot of games, I think, where they just spread themselves as far and wide as possible in as many avenues as humanly possible. And it seems like Korea as a region, despite the fact that the production value is fantastic for First Strike, they're pumping a bunch of resources into that particular region, the viewership is not there. It's not there.
I think it all.
They had a 30K peak across First Strike, same as Japan.
For what they are investing into the region, though, I think they were expecting it to be
for sure
the big hit of FPS games. But I mean, how many times have we beat this dead horse talking about the PC bong situation with the Vanguard anti-cheat?
I think give them another 40 minutes on
it feels like every single week.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We'll have a special hour episode on it again.
I will say though, this all adds up. The Cloud9 story right now, the pieces they're all coming together, and it does make sense. It seems like they want to invest more in the NA roster. They're seeing the numbers.
Yep.
They want to get in on that. They want to get in on the 300K final. So we're gonna get a bigger name coming from CS. Try to rework that roster, make something happen. Korean numbers aren't as high. Don't really need the roster anymore. Let's focus on where the
I think it's also
really.
because it's also because it's also because Riot have announced in the rules that you're not allowed to have multiple organizations that are going to be competing at the same tournament. So
isn't that the same region?
No, I mean, the Masters events are going to be international. So in theory, if you have Cloud9 NA playing against Cloud9 Korea at the Masters, I believe that wouldn't be allowed.
And there was a lot of controversy around that in like CS recently at one of the majors. I forget which one. It was like MIBR owned one team that was playing. I can't remember.
Oh, it's because some of the players owned shares of teams.
Yes, yeah. So I feel like Riot already. That's a good precedent to set for Riot. I think. Saying like, hey, no conflict of interest already right off the bat. Like, sure, it stinks, but like, it makes sense. And I think C9, though they still have C9 white.
But that's different. And I know that that's different because someone from inside the scene has told me, even though Riot haven't announced it for some reason, that they make an exception for all women teams because they actively want to promote that. Like, they don't want to promote people owning multiple different regions, but they do want to promote people like giving more opportunities to women within the scene. So it's a total exception and it's treated differently. So you are apparently, as long as my source was correct on the inside, Riot are allowing the organizations to own an all women's team as well, but they're not allowing them to own multiple different regional rosters.
Yeah.
Well, I can't see that going poorly at all in the future. I feel like there's, we'll see how that goes. But I think that's good.
Do you think that's a bad ruling? I think that's pretty good.
I think the ruling in general is fine. I'm simply saying that I could foresee in the future the gamers are going to rise up and they're not going to like it at some point.
I can already tell after this episode we're going to see 10 comments and literally in the same thread arguing with one another.
Because like at face value, technically, if we're saying just at its most base value, assuming this is correct, with no context, I'm not turning on my brain at all. I am just going to be a Twitter user, right? And so I am just going to say like, okay, these teams are both owned by one organization. Theoretically, if they are in the same competition together, they are violating the rules, right? Even though there's an exception. Even though it's an exception, I can already see this is where and then you don't even have to bring in all the other aspects of it. That the gamers are going to rise up 100%.
Like conflict of interest, like Cloud9's rosters collaborating with each other during a tournament.
Yeah, like what if they run into each other?
It's going to be nonsense. I think. I don't think it's I don't believe it's an issue. I think it's fine. But I 100% am predicting at some point in the future, even if it doesn't even happen, but we just talked about it here, there will be an epic gamer moment, 100%, and they're not going to like it. They're not going to like it.
Yeah. I mean, it already existed when with the seeding in the first qualifier, first strike.
Yeah, I guess it's true. Yeah.
I mean, people were already gone up in arms. I'm quitting Valorant. Good, fuck off.
I mean, obviously, if Cloud9 White does become a tier 1 team, then you have to be worried about conflict of interest there with the two teams competing against each other in same tournaments and stuff like that. I think that's something to be avoided. But the reason that I quite like the ruling overall is that I don't think it makes sense to force organizations to choose between a all-male team and an all-female team. It doesn't make sense because the organizations, generally speaking, are going to go with the team that gets them the most success, which, because there are way more men competing at the top level, is normally going to be the men. So you want to incentivize organizations to have multiple rosters if one of them is going to be an all-women's team. It just benefits the scene overall. It benefits the growth of women getting into gaming and getting into Valorant. The only problems are when both of those teams end up actually clashing in top tournaments. But I think you can be more selective with it. Like, it's such a niche case because not all orgs have secondary rosters. Not all orgs even are likely to or would want to or have the ability to as well. I think you can treat it on a much more of a case-by-case basis.
Yeah,
it's sticky though. It's sticky, I think, because there's going to be devil's advocates if I were to be like, well, don't you want Valorant to succeed in Korea. So why would, and obviously there's the numbers issue, right? But like C9 being invested, but also seeing that if they were having international competition, both the rosters there and preemptively dropping their roster in Korea, what you could argue, it sort of brings down the level of interest in Korea, right? And like, once again, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm just saying that like, I feel like Riot is already setting themselves up potentially for some sticky issues in the future there, and like having to deal with a lot of like dumb, stupid bullshit just by this ruling, if that is the case.
Possibly, maybe. But you know
Maybe.
You know what I want to talk about?
Go on.
Patch 1.14.
Nice.
So it was such
Bring
a
out the patch.
such a sultry whisper about the patch in my ears. It was such a very erotic moment.
Yeah, patch 1.14. So the icebox changes, the Sage buffs.
Yep.
They made it so you have to win 10 unrated games to win in competitive. I don't know what Snowball Fight is, but overall, a pretty minor patch with the exception of the icebox changes. Obviously, one of the most hated maps since the game's inception. These changes, I think, are solving a lot of the common complaints that people had with the map, which was that the verticality was so extreme at some points that your crosshair, like the 0.5 200 DPI sense players like myself, couldn't wrangle your arms quick enough to work in 3 dimensions. You can only work on 2D planes. So
Yeah. Where do you want to start with this?
I think we start with the icebox changes. I like the icebox changes. A site was a bit of a clusterfuck in terms of pushing it, or even just defending against pushes onto A.
Now I'm going to tell you something.
Yeah.
I'm going to kick it off with something that bothers me about these changes.
Okay.
That little box, Kurt, can you scroll down to the little box on A site in the corner? That's not it. Keep going.
No, it's when they replaced the radiant
keep
crates.
Keep going.
They replaced
There
the
it
2
is.
crates and they made a little box. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something. That little box bothers me.
What is it?
It is just,
It's just a
not
small, they
aesthetically pleasing in any way.
It
just,
says
Why
they
is it
just
so
call it a
small?
smaller object. They just say it's a smaller object. So it looks like they've taken the boxes and just made them smaller.
But why is it there at all?
Yeah, for many reasons. There's something about it aesthetically that bothers me, just how small it is. It's such an odd size as well. Look at
It
it.
looks like a tiny truck.
It's so strange.
Does this do, looking at this, other than for like tripwires maybe, is there any usage of this geometry?
Yeah, I mean,
hide
trips,
utility
hide your
around
alarm
it.
bot behind it. I mean, you can hide. Yeah,
I guess you could have some alarm bots.
Turret.
yeah. Put a little annoying
Stop a
turret on.
bot from clearing it all out.
I mean, it's.
Shit. It's shit.
Just that's yeah. But hey, progress is progress.
yeah, I mean,
It's
listen,
not progress,
stop
though.
being so
It's
negative.
not progress.
Stop being so negative.
Sorry. No, I'm going to be negative. Scroll back. Scroll. Okay, let's...
Which
They
way do you want
haven't-
me to scroll, Josh?
They haven't fundamentally redesigned anything apart from the sloping wall. The other redesigns are just attempts to fix singular problems that have introduced more problems. If you
Okay,
go
so-
up one to the fucking horrific, no, sorry, up another one to the horrific gate that they have just added in the middle here. I
we zoom
watched
in
the
on that
VODs from
gate?
this week, and this area of the map is
Thank
just
you.
ridiculous now. It makes no sense. If you're trying to take a duel through the gate, it's the most awkward, convoluted, clumsy shit in the world. The defenders now have priority access to this high ground and to the angle, which in itself is a bit of a problem because the whole site now is so much more difficult to defend. It almost feels
You mean
undefendable.
the attackers have priority,
No.
you mean?
Yes, sorry. The attackers have priority to that high ground, and the defenders have no area that they can stand where they won't just get utterly overwhelmed on the site. Like this site was only defenders sided. This map is only defenders sided because there's so many dumb positions to hold in. If you remove the dumb positions because you want the map to flow better, the attackers are just going to roll this map, I feel.
Yeah.
So you need to redesign areas like this. Like this is not a good area anymore. You've tried to hotfix it and you've just turned it into a mess.
Yeah,
I mean, I like them reducing verticality. I think overall, reducing the verticality a bit for this site in particular, is okay. You know,
Yes.
because you don't want to have to, you don't have to break your, you don't have to change your neck position. And when you swing your mouse like 90 degrees vertical upward to go see the enemy team, right? Like I think that's kind of dumb. But the gate and the little crates, the little tiny crates, I do wonder what value that's really adding to this site as for at all. Like, because at this point, you know, with attackers having the priority angle and the gate being here, like, are you just gonna play for retake all the time? Are you even gonna attempt to hold?
That's what I was thinking.
But also,
I think
retaking on this map is shite as well. Like if you plant in that spot on the top of the A site, how the fuck are you retaking that?
Yeah, retaking is incredibly difficult. I also, to some extent, I think that holding post plants can be pretty difficult as well because there's just so many wild angles. At least at the moment, I was seeing teams struggling to trade for each other when they were holding post plants because there's just so much to watch for. I mean, I think the reason they got, I would suspect the reason that they changed that box is because I think that anchoring the A site was a little bit too easy because once an attacker, you go back to the map, Kurt, sorry, but once an attacker goes past like that first little part of the site, like past the me spot, and they cross into the site.
If you scroll up, Kurt, you can find a me spot.
You're checking like 9.
There you go.
Once you go past that point, you are checking 9 angles at once. And if you're anchoring back site, you quite literally always get 1 free kill. You will always find someone pushing up that is not looking at you. It's just always going to happen because there are so many angles that a player pushing has to check that you pretty much are guaranteed a free kill if you're holding back site. So it sort of nullifies that to an extent. It just, I mean, it removes one place a player could be hiding. But
I like the changes overall. I think they've got their heads in the right place in terms of where they're making these adjustments. Because the overwhelming complaint was the verticality. Like the player base is not used to that kind of this style of maps. I mean, it was more like a Halo map, is what we were all saying when we were playing it for the first time. But like the reduction of all this verticality to make it so that you're not just craning your neck, craning your mouse, messing up your crosshair placement because of, you know, what, an Omen or a Raze playing up on top of the boxes. These are the positive sides of it. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the base foundation of the way that this map is set up and the sheer size of it, it's kind of fundamentally a bit flawed as a map for a kind of tactical shooter that's based so much on rotation timings. With the size of it, the sheer size of it. So even once you really knock out a lot of the issues on each individual site, you're still going to see this being a very wonky map. A very wonky map in terms of how it's played, just off the basis of how fucking wide it is.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think the changes are in the right direction, but they have done that classic thing that I saw so many TF2 map creators in the past do, where an area doesn't look good, so they just stick a crate in, or they just remove a wall, or something else. And in the end, you end up with just a hodgepodge of a map, because you've had to add so many weird things to block sight lines or to close off areas, and the map just doesn't. It would have benefited from a larger redesign earlier on. That I think is the reason that these changes bother me, is not because they're bad changes. I think they're pretty decent incremental changes, but the map itself has bigger flaws. Yeah. And so I'd rather see it reworked. Maybe now is not the time to rework when you only have 5 maps in the pool. Maybe you wait until you add the 6th, and then you take Icebox out for a bit of a redesign and add it back in with the 7th map. Something like that, I think, would be actually the best way of doing it. But there's still just stuff that really bothers me about the fundamental design of this map.
Yeah, but they're moving in the right direction, at least in my mind. At least with making changes to it, you know.
Yeah, I would agree.
Which is a good thing.
But I think that mid still needs some type of rework.
I was just thinking about like the playing retake on A, and I'm like, is it going to get to the point where you just leave one person to lurk and the rest of your team pushes mid so you get a chance to attack A? You just rotate all the way around, and you just then start attacking on A as well instead.
And so the meta then becomes for the attackers to push through A to B.
Yeah, and they're just chasing each other in a circle, round and round. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Maybe,
possibly.
maybe.
I mean, we can try that in our ranked games to see how it works. I think it
down.
actually
Going to
could
be innovators.
successful.
Going to be really big innovators there. Not at
I'm
all
down,
hated
I'm down.
in the ranked community.
Oh yeah, I'm down.
For rotating through.
What else was in
mid to
these patch notes? It was the Sage changes.
Yes.
They made changes to a barrier, right?
Yeah. So it's
and
just,
and also the orb, but the orb was like
barrier
superficial.
strong.
The barrier is now just stronger. It doesn't start
Yes.
decaying right
Thicker.
for a while. I
But
don't know.
also, yeah, well, it
It's-
doesn't decay, and also it's yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. It doesn't decay. Actually.
Yeah, it can't be placed in the buy phase though as well. I like this change about it not being able to be placed before the round starts. Like if you imagine on Ascent, you know, like what back when Sage was meta and you would have the ops getting boosted on like on top of the hut to be able to watch Catwalk, and then when you're playing defense, they get boosted in Pizza to be able to watch mid. Like I thought that was always pretty shit that you had no idea where the Sage wall had been used, and that you have to like, what do you have to do? Like if you're holding Cat, you have to just assume that they have the angle on you, and
Well,
I
you
don't
just
know,
didn't-
use a
you didn't play
drone or
it.
something.
You didn't
Yeah, you
play
just
it.
had to not play it. Just the fact that they had a Sage locked off that area of the map. I always thought that was pretty horseshit. So I like that they've made this shift, even though it's a potential nerf to Sage slightly. I don't think it's a big deal, and I think that the wall buffs are quite a nice complement to it.
Yeah. I think it's fun.
I think the best Sages were being a lot more dynamic with their walls, anyways. So like these set, like just using the wall in the buy phase was. It wasn't that it was like not viable, but like you generally would prefer to get the most value out of it if you were playing Sage with like really good Sage players in actually once you're playing the round versus before the round starts.
I also think where the meta's gone with Sage, her real viability and strength has come a lot from more intelligent slow orb usage. It's not even really the wall at this point.
I mean, I feel like the wall was still adding a lot of value. Like when you watch like Heretics play, like the way that Lola used wall was really impactful at times. I think especially when they just did a sight take. Like I feel like wall still had a lot of value, but
Oh yeah, for sure.
for sure,
Yeah,
for
still
sure,
really good, but
it's the slow orb has defined her a bit more. I think recently.
maybe this has nothing to do with nothing, but maybe Sentinels should run the Heretics comp on Bind because they've been struggling there with the sick rays. So maybe they can just throw Sick back on the Sage and bring the Heretics to the United
You gave
States.
me whiplash with how different that was to the patch notes we were just reviewing.
Well, he
Just
did say it
thought,
had nothing to
man.
do with nothing.
What else is in the patch? Anything else? I don't think there is actually. I think it was a pretty small patch.
Okay, genuinely, this snowball fight game mode sounds amazing. I mean, I don't know whether that's just
I haven't
me,
seen it being played
but
yet.
I haven't seen it being played either, but the description of it is that you have a snowball cannon that's like the brimstone molly gun. So it's a projectile. And I love the idea of having like a projectile fight in this game because it's so different to anything you would ever otherwise have in CS. I've never played like a CS game mode, even one for fun, that had some kind of projectile element in it. It takes me back to like my TF2 days, the idea of playing some I don't know, snowball
This
fight
is our
projectile
time.
game.
I mean, there was
End
snowball
if.
fight in Overwatch. The closest I could think of
Projectile.
was like of a fully projectile fight was like, I mean, I don't even know. For some reason, I'm thinking of like throwing knife only lobbies in COD. Like yeah, that's for some reason that's what's reaching out to me.
Yeah. I think this could be a really fun game mode. I'm gonna play some of it. It sounds cool.
What is this next topic? New agent teaser.
There's a new agent. You know how they do those little map teases? Remember last time they had like the dog bowl on Ascent?
Yeah.
They did another one of those.
Did they? They
Yeah,
had a
like-
dog bowl on Ascent.
Yeah, that's what it was. Remember?
That was the teaser.
And then we were
Sky.
speculating about like and then we were like,
Oh.
maybe you can like send out a dog that retrieves guns for you
yeah.
and bring them back to you. Little did we know.
What is the teaser?
I think you played it on your stream, didn't you, Josh? It's on Reddit somewhere.
did.
It's
I mean, good luck with me finding it, but
it was on the Icebox. They always do the tease on like the latest map,
Yeah.
and it was some footsteps trotting through the snow.
Oh, dude, let's
Invisible
analyze
Man.
it. The Invisible
We can
Man.
do that. We can make a 10-minute video over analyzing the teaser.
I am trying to find it.
Come on, Josh.
And
It's definitely on. It's on the competitive subreddit.
I guarantee you, if I do.
Footsteps
Oh,
walking.
here it is.
Yeah.
Found it.
Okay.
It's not.
I tried it
It's
for
not
you.
footsteps already set. It's you can see them being made.
We're gonna play. We'll play the video, and your
What?
questions will be answered.
What is that?
Just watch it, Bren.
Okay.
Let's all settle in.
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna
Let's
send it to
all
Put
settle
on your little
first.
investigative
I've
cap.
sent it
Oh,
to
there we
Kurt.
go.
Let's really break this one down.
What is this? Take a look at this, Bab. Oh, what
Snow.
the fuck is
Oh.
that?
And it's
No.
gone.
And
play that-
also,
Can we play that back at 0.1 speed?
it makes noise as well. So it makes a footsteps noise. It isn't just a random visual effect.
Can we get the
Oh.
epic pin out? Draw on screen here. Can we get some circles
Look at that. Wow.
highlighting?
Hold on.
What?
So, is this Omen's cousin? Just invisible?
Yeah. I don't
Hmm.
think it's an invisible agent though.
No.
I think this is teasing a decoy agent. If I had to guess,
Ah.
Like
You like
something
that
where-
one? What's that one character from Apex Legends where he's able
yeah,
to
yeah.
like
Mirage.
put duplicates of himself out?
Mirage, I think.
Mirage,
Yeah.
Mirage. Do you think it's something like that?
that's what I
Well,
would
that would be
guess. yeah.
so annoying.
I don't
I
think
feel
it
like
would be
that would be.
useful.
You don't think so at all? I mean, I think it would be. It depends on what exactly. Like, it would be very easily figured out, right? Like, if you see if they have like a Mirage type of agent where like he sends out a clone of himself,
Well,
but
what
he's just
if-
like walking
what
forward, like you
if-
can clearly tell that it's not him, right?
What if
So,
he can send out a clone, but it takes up part of his health
For what reason?
to send it out? That's like the expenditure.
But how is that any more useful? Because like sending your clone, like if you're just
because- I feel
like that
walking
follows
forward
the
through a
lore,
choke with your
too.
gun out, like
Because it's like-
anyone's
it's-
gonna know it's.
Yeah, the lore of it is like they're using part of their body to create the
Yeah.
clone, but it also means like you can't just spam out a clone. You're going to be at a different health threshold for the next gunfight you're in.
My brain is expanding.
Dude.
It fits the lore with okay, so you know when the Omen is in spawn, if you have
With
a Sage,
Sage?
and he's like, Sage, do you ever wonder where the life you give comes from or
Yep.
whatever? And it comes from his brother who's using life force to split off
And
into
create clones.
clones.
Yeah, it's his brother.
Goddamn lore masters here.
Maybe it's Omen. Oh, you know, there's in the lore through Omen's voice lines, he
Yeah.
does say, you know, he struggles with like multiple personality disorder.
This could
Like,
be
he's got split-
Nemo.
He's got
His-
split
his bro-
personalities.
it's
Is
the
this
inverse.
is this one of
Finding Nemo.
no
Finding Nemo, of
Is this
course. It's
one
all
of-
coming together.
Is this one of Omen's personalities? Like in the
Listen,
experiment that he
This
was
is
in, where
I
it
can see
sees-
it.
You want
This
that
is-
question?
where it got
I
split
could
off.
see
This is one of
no basis of reality that's being discussed here.
this could
What do
be
you know-
one of Omen's split personalities.
And Avast just doesn't get it though. You know
That
what I
you
mean?
guys,
I
you
just
guys just
don't.
aren't on the
These
same
guys-
wave.
These
as
guys
us.
just don't get it.
I think it could be. I think it could be a movie collab. Like, you know, they made that movie, The Invisible Man. So maybe it could be some movie. Maybe they're moving to Fortnite territory where they start doing like crossovers.
Yeah, could be.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'm not
The
convinced that,
crossover
that an agent that can
R-rated
actually
war.
give decoy stuff would be
Good. I don't think it would be good.
You don't think it'll be good?
I
I'm
don't
not
think the
sure.
decoy would be good. No,
It
I don't
would
think
depend how much, like, what his other abilities are, because obviously they only teased the dog for Sky. If all Sky had was a dog, she wouldn't be very good. So obviously, there's going to be more abilities that are attached to this.
I can see
but
some usage for a clone.
It depends on it really depends on the agent design, because at its most basic level, we take it to its fundamental. Imagine like just like, let's say for example, this Mirage. And if you're not familiar with what Mirage does in Apex Legends, he's sort of like, he's able to just send a literally just a clone of himself that runs forward. You know, there's not really a lot of dynamic to it at all. And like his ult, it's like it splits a bunch of different versions of himself away. So when you're chasing him down for the kill, you don't know which one it is because there's so many of them out. But like for like for like Valorant, imagine if it was just a basic type of clone thing that walks forward. That's so obvious unless you're playing.
No. Okay.
Like it would be like.
Here's
too
how we
obvious
fix this.
to-
Listen,
utility,
listen,
you know?
listen here.
Go off.
I'm going off. Okay, I'm fucking going off. It's a clone, but you control it like you do a drone or the thylacine dog, right? You control it like that, but it's a clone with you. So you control it with the gun and everything. It's like a perfect mirror of you, but it costs
So you
health to
can
use.
kill somebody with it?
No.
Can
You
you
can't
shoot?
shoot.
Okay,
But
okay.
imagine this new agent being like an entry agent, and that's being one of its abilities. And you can trade off of it with your teammates. So sometimes you can like double fake out, where you'll be running in first, and you'll be making the enemy second guess. Like, is this a clone? Is this a real person? I've got to shoot them anyway, and your teammates come in and trade it out.
Yeah.
Would that be too broken?
Yeah. No, I don't think it would be too broken, because it would be like the Phoenix ultimate, but without the ability to shoot.
Yeah.
And if it takes like a portion of your health as well.
Yeah, if it takes health, I could see it, because otherwise, I mean, in that case, it's like, it also depends on how many uses it would have too, I think.
Infinite.
I think
Yeah.
one.
As long as you have health, you can use it.
Because otherwise the map, it's too easy to get map control, right? It's way too easy to just see what's
As
happening.
long as you have health, you can use it. You're just
One
slowly
around.
killing yourself.
Maybe 300, maybe, dare I say, 400 credits.
You're
around.
wild. 400 credits.
And it has
Wild,
it has
Yeah.
very low health, like maybe 2 body shots.
Well, I
Could
think
make
it would
it
just
evaporate.
be, yeah. Or maybe it would just be
Yeah,
like an
I think
unarmored
that'd be pretty
opponent.
cool.
But also, once again, we don't have any indication there's anything like this. There was an invisible footsteps. In fact, this could be invisibility. You know?
Yeah,
like, we
but
have
I
no-
like my
There's
idea
no
better.
way they're adding invisibility. I mean, invisibility is just utterly broken in a game like this. I don't understand how you could.
It would be truly obnoxious.
So I don't
Well,
know
I-
why. I don't know why
thought-
we're going to the cologne.
Yeah.
I will say, I thought
Yep.
that a Resurrect would be broken in a game like this, but they balanced it quite well.
And a turret.
One of my first, yeah.
Resurrect is punishable. Invisibility, by its definition, is not punishable. You can't tell where they are. I mean, if you could see the footsteps on the ground, you can try and shoot at them, I suppose.
Yeah,
but that is just so obnoxious to be looking around for footsteps if it really was an invisible agent.
Well, here's the thing. When one of the first tweets I made of Valorant, it was like, do you remember the Sage got leaked with the Resurrect?
Mm-hmm.
I put out a tweet being like, there's no fucking way. They were giving us all this chat about competitive integrity. There's no fucking way they're bringing in a hero that can res, you know, like an agent that can res.
Yeah.
But they balanced it effectively. Like, there's a huge downtime in terms of it. You're vulnerable while you're doing it. There are ways to mitigate the intense advantages to the stealth agent. Anyway,
I
don't
gotta
wanna-
say, this is me trying to get hired by Riot, but I think that they have done a really good job balancing this game. When
Yeah, they have.
yeah.
I mean, there are not a lot of games out there where when they add a new agent or character, that they're just balanced pretty much right away.
Out the gate.
And I don't think they haven't added any agents that are
Raze.
I mean, Raze is probably the most broken, and they nerfed her adequately pretty quickly.
Not even.
I mean,
that was in the beta still. I
Yeah,
think,
and that was in
right?
the beta. I mean, they added a
Do you
character
consider
with a
Sky
turret, and it was pretty
underpowered,
balanced.
though? Do you consider Sky, because balance runs both ways? It's not just a character being released and being too strong. It's a character being released and being so weak that she's useless. That's a different type. You know, would you argue Sky is appropriately balanced or underpowered?
Yeah,
I think
mean,
she's appropriately balanced. I think Killjoy's appropriately balanced. I think Reyna's appropriately balanced. Pretty good streak, honestly, because typically you expect these agents to come out and it's like, all right, well, everyone's gonna be playing this one for 1 month, and then it's gonna get nerfed,
Yeah.
and then no one's gonna play,
I
and then
do-
she's gonna
I
get
do-
overbuffed.
I do recall every episode we record when we get the agent kit, we get our grubby little mitts on it. We're always saying how broken it could be in perceivable. Like I remember when we were going over the Sky kit, we were like, "Oh, this is crazy." The Killjoy kit, this is crazy.
Oh yeah, I
the
mean,
Reyna kit, we were like, "Wait, what? She can go invisible?" Like, but they are balanced quite well.
when they added an agent with a turret
Uh-huh.
to a tactical shooter, there were pitchforks outside of the Riot headquarters.
Crazy. We went crazy.
But it's totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Box Tailored was doing on on Immortal Minds. He was talking about how he thought Sky was dumb, stupid, broken initially on his initial reactions, because he was like, "So you're telling me I have a flash, 3 flashes that I can control, and it tells me that I have
they're
flashed
flashed.
someone."
Yeah.
But then obviously in practice, once you start using it, it's like everything. You have to actually
Alright.
see it be used in practice.
We got to start wrapping this episode because we got stuff to side of this podcast. So we're gonna go quickly. Skin review. What the hell are the new skins?
Christmas skins.
Oh, dude, I seen the little
Candy cane.
candy cane.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
so ridiculous.
And you can break them. I think if you get a melee kill, right, they break.
I think
Oh,
so.
really?
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
they
my
break.
God.
Yeah, because
I haven't seen it happen
I've been
yet,
watching streams. Everyone's always asking, like, it's like if you're watching Hiko or Steel or whatever, it's like, have they broken the candy cane yet? Have they broken the candy cane?
Listen,
This is,
I'm all for a little festivity. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, we're going into full Fortnite territory. I'm here for it at this point. Full speed
love it.
ahead. Ridiculous skins. Is that it? Just they only added the
No,
candy cane?
they added the weapon skins as well. They're like snow globe-esque. Like you can see a
No way.
Christmas village.
Oh,
way.
these are terrible.
I mean, it's really tough.
Yeah, these are
Can you skip
really
ahead to like
awful.
a
What
big
the
gun?
fuck is this?
I
Like
think the design is cool, but I think they're just awful.
They're
go.
so distracting.
Yeah, they're
And
just distracting. But I think the design is
don't-
really cool.
You
Though.
Oh my god, what the?
Yeah, you can see a Christmas
I actually
village
think
in
this
the
is
skin.
a sick, like actually really cool, like implementation of a holiday theme idea. But it's just impossibly terribly to look at. It's just you don't like looking at it. It sucks. It doesn't look
It
good
is.
to play with it.
It is so distracting, and I can't.
But it's so
don't
cool.
know if I'd play with
though.
it, but
still
I think it's
so
cool. I hope they show when you go into the dark in the game, the gun turns to like a and then the lights turn on in the village.
oh, that's so cool! I didn't
is-
The
realize you
skin,
did
no,
that.
the skin is amazing. Like the skin
That's
itself
insane.
is actually amazing. It's just the fact that it's an insane amount of visual clutter and very
Yeah,
distracting.
it's so
Yep.
distracting.
Dude,
But
that
for
is.
like a
that is
casual
so good.
player, it's fucking crazy. That's
mean,
actually
cool.
so cool.
If you go into the dark, it has like the northern lights above it as
Yeah.
well, and all of the. I feel like I have
It's
to buy
cool.
those skins.
Yeah.
I
Those are
think
the
it's pretty
greatest
sick.
skins I've ever seen.
It's pretty sick. And listen, visual clutter is the name of the game with Valorant skins. They're all
Yep.
just chaotic.
Chaos. You got a dragon
So-
wiggling.
Yep.
You got a
And
miniature
I'm
portal to another dimension.
I'm a sucker for some festive activity.
That's so good.
That is pretty
I
cool.
love some festivities.
I feel like in the game it wouldn't be that distracting when you're playing.
Oh,
Because you're focused on your crosshair.
It's
You're-
kind of distracting.
I think you're focused
mean-
on your crosshair.
well, there's only one way to find out.
Buying it.
Are you
Yeah.
Drop
gonna-
in the bag.
Is this a buy or a pass?
I'm gonna pass on this because I'm just
Or-
no. I've got. You listen.
Oh,
I've got
that's
the
for me.
Riot. I've got the Riot credits, but I'm just saving myself. You know.
I would say if you're big into like if Christmas is your holiday,
Oh,
like
that
it's
is
your
so-
thing, then you get this skin. If Christmas is like you're drinking eggnog as soon as December
me.
1st hits, like
Uh-huh.
you're buying the skin immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. You may be. Oh wow! Look at that. Anyway.
God, I think
all right.
I think
we
that's
gotta
very
move
cool.
this along. We gotta move this along.
I think that's very cool.
It's not for me personally, but I like the technological implementation that they've gone for with
Yeah.
this skin.
If I wasn't a brokey, I might buy
Yeah,
it.
I quite like it. So let's move on to the only segment that matters. The end of the day, it's time for Wyatt's Weekly Award. Let's go. Take it away. Play the clip.
Dude, where's my res? Oh, hey. Didn't see you there. It's Wyatt's Weekly Award.
What?
Kurt,
Wait.
can you
It's new. We have a new trophy.
got a new
bring me the trophy this week?
There it is.
Wyatt's Weekly Award.
Wow.
How many of these do you have?
Have you
You've
just
got a
found
new
like
trophy.
a local like trophy making shop
How
to
many
like do
trophies
all
have you
these?
I don't know, 2.
That's two. That's two. It's not a lot, but like it's more like as it goes on. Are we gonna add? If you keep adding more awards, eventually this whatever local shop you're going to is gonna be like this guy is really invested in making his own awards. Like I don't know what he's doing, but
Yeah,
it's like
that's
R.L.
incredible.
Stein. Have you seen R.L. Stein, the writer? He gives himself his own like award, a writing award, like every year, and that's gonna be Wyatt with this.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a nice little gamer based one. You got your controller on there, headset, little RGB keyboard, all your classic
Who's
gamer
this going
accessories.
to?
This week, it's going to someone you might not expect. We're taking this. We're kind of taking this show to the next level. We're reaching wider audiences now.
Okay.
We're going. I might be going a little Hollywood with this award, but this week
Fire.
I'm giving the award to David Beckham, and the reason for is and the reason for
His face!
is because I am just so pleased to see that the man was able to reunite the duo of Sayf and Yassine.
Thank you, David Beckham, who was personally involved in that trade and personally involved in that roster
Lovely.
move.
Absolutely. I'm just so satisfied to see that duo has returned.
God, that is the face of a number one Sayf and Yassine fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
And yeah, I mean that's the main reason. That was one of my favorite duos throughout the Ignition series. And I was so high on Bonk, and I was really excited to see what they could have done in the future. And then to see those two torn apart just broke my little heart. And to see them come back together, it's a beautiful sight. Genuinely, I think one of the best duos in EU. And I think that it's just good for the EU scene overall. I mean, I think they're going to be a powerhouse team coming into this next year. And yeah, just thank you, David. You made it happen.
Well done, David Beckham. He's
on
going to
you,
be so
David.
pleased as well to have received this award.
Are you saying has Steele gotten his award yet? Have you sent it to him?
It's in the background.
No.
You can see it in the background.
Yeah, given that it's right there.
Oh, I thought that was, I thought that was
No.
just the replica. That wasn't the real one. They keep the real one in the 100 Thieves.
Yeah,
Cash
I
App
actually
vault.
tried to deliver it to him, but while I was stalking him, he didn't get on his flight, so I couldn't actually drop it off. Yeah, pretty difficult. Anyway, let's wrap this show, huh? Thanks for watching, everybody. The Plat Chat VALORANT episode. We laughed, we cried, we discussed Valorant as you do. But I hope you enjoyed your stay. And if you enjoyed your stay, let us know in the comments by saying, "Smile, I enjoyed my stay." See ya.